king and his men stole the queen from her bed and bound her in her bones. The seas be ours, and by the powers where we will we roam. Yo ho, all hands, hoist the colors high. Heave ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die.
What's up, people? Time for another pirate history show. Got a little time tonight. Figured it'd be a good time to do it. Hope everybody's having a good night tonight. I'm gonna smoke a little weed and talk about some pirates. For anybody that hasn't been watching or listening, rather, this is the 4th episode that we're doing on the true histories and of the Pirates and the Buccaneers. And we're starting the first of 4 books. Right now we're leading into chapter 13, as a matter of fact, of our first of 4 books. And this is the Pirates of Panama by John Esquemeling. The only true and authentic long-form first-hand account of a pirate that lived in those days and sailed with some of the most famous pirate captains you've heard of, and was there for some of the most famous pirate raids. The first episode, we just kind of did a quick introduction on the book, led into how John Esquemeling even got down to Tortuga in 1666, and how he eventually became a member of the Brethren of the Coast. The second episode, we started off with a couple of the smaller pirate tales, some of the original pirate tales, and some of the history of the Buccaneers, how the pirates outfitted their ships and all that kind of thing. And last episode, we continued on with our sailing with Captain Morgan. As we know, like I said before, John Esquemeling was there as a barber surgeon for the Brethren of the Coast. He sailed with a lot of very famous captains. One of them was Captain Morgan. And because Captain Morgan's life was so unbelievable and his run as a captain was so long, his exploits so many, we have quite a few chapters on the sailing with Captain Morgan by John Esquemeling. The last we left off, Captain Morgan had sailed out from Isla de la Vaca, or Cow Island, where the pirates would rendezvous to go out on raids together. And he left out of there with 960 pirates to go and do some land raiding. That was absolutely insane. The last bits that we left off of, all of the torture and the fighting and the strategy involved was amazing. The Spanish almost had them locked up in Lake Maracaibo. They almost couldn't escape. And eventually, obviously, they were able to outsmart the Spanish and get out of there. Not easily. And really barely made it out. But they did. And it was amazing. So now that they've made it out of Lake Maracaibo and we're going into chapter 13, Captain Morgan is going to be going back to Hispaniola, or Haiti. also where Tortuga sits just north of Haiti. And in chapter 13, Captain Morgan is returning to Hispaniola to equip a new fleet with intent to pillage again on the coast of the West Indies. So they just made a big score, and they're getting ready to go back and regroup and put the word out, get another crew together, and head back out, do some more pirating. Yeah, say hello to the few people that have come in so far. I saw MRH in here earlier. I saw Co-Train in here earlier. Always good to see you guys. Tommy, William Wallace, good to see you guys too. I try to do this about once a week. Try to do a pirate show about once a week when I find the time. Oh, what's up, David James? Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to catch live too, and I'm glad you enjoyed the earlier episodes. For anybody that's listening later on or might have just found this show, this is episode 4. We do have 3 previous episodes that'll fill you in on everything, as I said when I was introing into the show tonight. So definitely go back and check those out. Click like and all that kind of stuff. Leave a comment, maybe about some of the crazier things you hear from the stories that we tell from this firsthand account of a real buccaneer and pirate. Take a sip of my drink. I'm going to hit my bowl. We're going to smoke some weed and talk about pirates. All right. I'm glad everybody's been enjoying the show. This is something I've been meaning to do for a long time. I've been deep into pirate history for forever. And I get deep into it. I own lots and lots of books, very hard to come by, old like parchments and all kinds of things. So we're going to have a good time with this series, going through all 4 of the major books that we have for accounts of people that were actually there upon the spot with the people you've heard of, with the pirates you heard of. And just by some of the comments we've received so far, a lot of these things are people have never heard of before. Even the fact that these books exist, especially this one, a lot of people didn't even know that this book existed. And I get that a lot when I talk to people, even people that are really into pirate history or into the subject. They have no idea that there are genuine, historically held firsthand accounts that are absolutely authentic, and this Pirates of Panama, the first one that we're starting with, and I started with it first because it is the longest one we have of somebody that was there for all of it. So we're going to head into chapter 13. Again, it's Captain Morgan goes to Hispaniola to equip a new fleet with intent to pillage again on the coast of the West Indies. Captain Morgan perceived now that fortune favored him by giving success to all his enterprises which occasioned him, as is usual in human affairs, to aspire to greater things, trusting she would always be constant to him. Such was the burning of Panama, wherein fortune failed not to assist him as she had done before, though she had led him thereto through 1,000 difficulties. The history hereof I shall now relate, being so remarkable in all its circumstances as peradventure nothing more deserving memory will be read by future ages. And this is true. The taking of Panama the first time by the pirates, as we're going to hear as we move through this, the taking of Panama the first time is hands down one of the greatest stories to ever be told. It really is true. The things that these men go through, the treasures and the spoils that they get for their reward, the stories that come of this, the people that were there, the people that were involved. This story often gives a completely new perspective on pirates to people that just think that these, they rode around in ships shooting cannons at other ships, like people that think that pirates were just the people that boarded other ships and stole from them, or and then burned them to the water line and all that kind of thing. That is, absolutely not true. Pirates oftentimes went on land and took entire villages and towns and cities. But as we've been reading through this history and in this first book, we know that there were a couple of people that really started that in a big way. And there is no bigger than Captain Morgan for the land raids, as with, again, hundreds of pirates. We're talking about hundreds of pirates. As we read together in the last chapter, even when they were describing about how a captain like Captain Morgan would put out the word that they were going on a mission, and they would say, meet us here at this time, and we'll all get together as the Brethren of the Coast. It's a democracy. We'll all vote. Everybody got a vote. They'd say, we'll all vote. We'll figure out what prize we're going to go after. And then together we will go out and we will get that prize. But Captain Morgan was a different kind of animal. This guy went after large towns, large cities, well fortified, lots of soldiers. It's just absolutely amazing. And we're going to be moving through, like I said, I'm going to read that paragraph again because it is very, very true. The taking of Panama the first time is hands down one of the greatest pirate tales to ever be told. And it's true. And we're going to get the authentic firsthand account of a man that was there. So let's start this over again from the top. Captain Morgan perceives now that fortune favored him, right? He's been having all this success. So he perceives now that fortune favors him by giving success to all of his enterprises, which occasioned him, as is usual in human affairs, to aspire to greater things, trusting that she would always be constant to him. Such was the burning of Panama, wherein fortune failed not to assist him as she had done before, though she had led him thereto through 1,000 difficulties. The history hereof I shall now relate, being so remarkable in all of its circumstances as peradventure nothing more deserving memory will be read by future ages. Captain Morgan, arriving at Jamaica, found many of his officers and soldiers reduced to their former indigency by their vices and debaucheries. Hence they perpetually importuned him for new exploits. So he shows up in Jamaica. All of his people are broke again because they've been drinking and, sleeping with women and tossing their money away. And while he's there, he's literally getting hounded by these people to go out on another raid so that they can get some more money. Captain Morgan, willing to follow fortune's call, stopped the mouths of many inhabitants of Jamaica, who were creditors to his men for large sums, with the hopes and promises of greater achievements than ever, by a new expedition. So all these creditors are after his people, and he says, listen, you guys leave my men alone. I'm going to take them out. We're going to get some more money. You guys are going to get paid. Leave all these fucking dudes alone. Don't worry about it. They're going to get some money. This done, he could easily levy men for any enterprise, his name being now so famous through all of those islands as that alone would readily bring him in more men than he could well employ. He undertook, therefore, to equip a new fleet, for which he assigned the south side of Tortuga as a place of rendezvous, writing letters to all of the expert pirates there inhabiting, as also to the governor and to the planters and hunters of Hispaniola, informing them of his intentions and desiring their appearance, if they intended to go with him. So he's putting out word again, right? It says he undertook, therefore, to equip a new fleet, for which he assigned the south side of Tortuga as a place of rendezvous. And he wrote letters to all of the best pirates that were anywhere near there, also to the governor and even to the planters and hunters of Haiti. So that's like a lot of the old salty buccaneers. And he put word out and says, hey, We're going to go. You guys all need to show up because what I have planned is fucking huge, right? These people upon this notice flocked to the place assigned in huge numbers, with ships, canoes, and boats, being desirous to follow him. Many who had not the convenience of coming by sea traversed the woods of Hispaniola, and with no small difficulties arrived there by land. Thus all were present at the place assigned and ready against October 24th, 1670. So these people literally came from everywhere. When he put out word that they were going on a huge raid, and he was like inviting everyone came. It says even people that couldn't get there by boat just said fuck it and literally walked through the forest and the woods and jungles of Haiti to get to the other side of the island so that they could get close to the meeting and get there. And they all met on October 24th, 1670. Captain Morgan was not wanting to be there punctually, coming in his ship to Port Couillon over against the island de la Vaca, right? So they're meeting at Cow Island again. I mentioned last episode that you'll hear that island come up over and over and over again as a meeting place for the pirates. And you should look that up on Google. Anybody that's really into this subject and likes to look up these places and see what they look like and see what they're about, look up Isla de la Vaca or Cow Island, Haiti, and you will find it. It's a beautiful, it's very small island with beautiful water around it. And just when you see it, imagine, there being literally dozens of pirate ships and canoes and small boats and medium-sized boats, and there being, 1,000 pirates there. Imagine that when you see this island. There's like 1,000 pirates there. This small little island, there'd be pirates all over it. They'd be all over the ships. The ships would be all throughout the bay. They'd all be meeting on the biggest of the ships. All the captains would get together on one or two of the biggest ships, and they would all start voting. They would all start having conversations about where they were going to go, what they were going to do. They'd start figuring out their plans for how the treasure was going to be split at the end of it all, right? They'd be making it like just like I said, if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, go back and listen to them. You'll get a good idea of how they prepared their ships and the regulations and the rules of the Brethren of the Coast and how they went about these kinds of things. So having gathered the greatest part of his fleet, he called a council to deliberate about finding provisions for so many people. So he's like, dude, we got a lot of people. We need to figure out how we're going to feed everybody, right? Here they concluded to send 4 ships and 1 boat with 400 men to the continent in order to rifle some country towns and villages for all the corn or maize that they could gather. They all set sail for the continent towards the river de la Hacha, designing to assault the village called La Rancheria, usually best stored with maize of all the parts thereabouts. Okay, so they're going to go to this place that supposedly has like the best corn and the most corn at any given time, because they've got hundreds of people that they need to feed. They sent 400 alone just to go and do this, right? Meanwhile, Captain Morgan sent another party to hunt in the woods, who killed a huge number of beasts and salted them. The rest remained in the ships to clean, fit, and rig them, that at the return of their friends, all things might be in a readiness to weigh anchor and follow their designs. What's up, Kermel? What's up, Deb? What's up, Mike? Right, so they all get together at the island, right? Cow Island, Island de la Vaca, Isla de la Vaca, right there near Haiti. He put out word, and hundreds, like they came like locusts from everywhere. And he says, okay, well, we've got all these people. We need to figure out how we're going to feed them all, right? We need to get provisions. We need food. We need drink. So he sends 400 men out on 4 ships and 1 boat to go to the continent and rival country towns and villages to get all the corn that they could possibly find, all the maize that they could find. Then he sent another group out into the woods to hunt for meat. Those people, a lot of them, I'm sure he sent like a lot of the buccaneers that were the hunters, as we learned early on in the series. where exactly all these people came from, their histories, where, what caused them to start becoming pirates, we found out even how the name Buccaneer came about, right? So go back and listen to those for sure, to get an idea of how good these guys are. You're going to hear more in the story as we move forward if you haven't heard any of the previous episodes of just how good these guys are with rifles. But they went out, they got all the meat, they salted it, they brought it back to their ships, and everybody that stayed behind in the bay at the island, it says that they remained there to clean, fit, and rig the ships so that as soon as everybody got back with the food, they'd be ready to haul ass and go start doing some pirating, right? All right, chapter 14. That means another hit of the ball here real quick. What's up, Mike? Thanks, man. I appreciate that. All right. Much better. Some lemonade. All right. Chapter 14. What happened in the River de la Hacha? So we're going to go on a little side story here, a little side tale. These 4 ships, setting sail from Hispaniola, steered for the River de la Hacha, where they were suddenly overtaken with a tedious calm. Being within sight of land, becalmed for some days, the Spaniards inhabiting along the coast, who had perceived them to be enemies, had sufficient time to prepare themselves, at least to hide the best of their goods, that without any care of preserving them, they might be ready to retire, if they proved unable to resist the pirates, by whose frequent attempts on those coasts they had already learned what to do in such cases. So, again, hey, what's up, MRH? Again, long-winded shit, right? We'll break this down. The 4 ships that got sent after all of the corn, right? It said they sent 400 guys in 4 ships in 1 boat. It says they sent them out to go grab all this corn and maize. And it says when these guys went down the River de la Hacha, or when they steered for the River de la Hacha, they were overtaken by a calm. They were becalmed. I explained this in one of the previous episodes, but anybody that's just listening, when you are becalmed, or if you're out in the water and you hit a calm, right, that meant all these ships were powered by sail, right? It meant there was no wind. If you were becalmed, or if you hit a calm in the ocean, it meant that there was no fucking wind. You were literally just floating there, right? You were at the mercy of currents a lot of times if you didn't anchor, right? Depending on, like, if you were becalmed and there was no wind, but there was a strong current, you might start losing ground. It happened to ships all the time back then. The currents of the ocean would just push them back fucking dozens of miles, right? So it says that they hit a calm, but they were within sight of land, and they were becalmed for some days, it says. So it gave the Spaniards that lived there on the coast plenty of time to see them and literally start hiding all of their shit. Right? They're like, and then, it goes on to say that they've learned their lesson from previous times, right? It says that, they've experienced problems with the pirates before, so they know that they're just going to hide all their shit and haul ass. They're not going to stick around and fight with these people. They're just going to fucking hide it all and get the hell out of there, right? There was then in the river a good ship come from Cartagena to lade with maize, and now almost ready to depart. Okay, so there's a big ship there in the river that came from Cartagena that's filled with maize, and that's what the pirates came for. The ship was now almost ready to depart. The men of this ship endeavored to escape, but not being able to do it, both they and the vessel fell into the hands of the pirates. This was a fit purchase for them, being good part of what they came for. Next morning, about break of day, they came with their ships ashore and landed their men, though the Spaniards made good resistance from a battery they had raised on that side, where of necessity they were to land, but they were forced to retire to a village, whither the pirates followed them. So it says the fucking pirates took the ships that were filled with corn, right? The pirates were like, hey, look, we might be becalmed, but those ships are literally about to leave, and they're coming right they have to come our way to get out of here. So let's just take them. Cool. They're filled with corn. This is awesome. We got most of what we came here for. Let's, now that we've got some wind, let's head over to the shore. They hit the shore. They're going to fight with the Spaniards a little bit. But they start kicking their ass. So the Spanish take off and the pirates are now chasing them. Here, the Spaniards rallying fell upon them with great fury and maintained a strong combat, which lasted until nighttime. But then, perceiving they had lost a great number of men, which was no less on the pirate side, they retired to secret places in the woods. Okay, so once the pirates got to the town, right, where the Spaniards had run to, they put up a good fight, and both sides killed a lot of people, right? So both sides had heavy losses. And now that it was nighttime, the Spanish were like, fuck, man, let's just go hide out in the woods, right? So they went and hid out in some secret places in the woods. The next day, the pirates, seeing them, all fled, and the town left empty of people. They pursued them as far as they could and overtook a party of them, whom they made prisoners and exercised with most cruel torments to discover where their goods were kept. Some were forced by intolerable tortures to confess, but others who would not were used more barbarously. Thus, in 15 days that they remained there, they took many prisoners, much plate and movables, with which booty they resolved to return to Hispaniola. Okay, so the pirates found a bunch of them, tortured them, made them tell them where all their shit was. And it says that they did get a lot of plate, which, remember, we said if you hear the word plate, it means solid gold, solid silver, right? These are metals that have not been turned into coins yet. They're like gold bars, silver bars, right? So they got a lot of treasure from these guys out of this town, apparently. They were there for 15 days fucking with these people. They got a lot of plate and a lot of movables with which they resolved to return to Hispaniola. Yet not, remember, that's where Captain Morgan and all the rest of the pirates are waiting for them. Yet not content with what they had got, they dispatched some prisoners into the woods to seek for the rest of the inhabitants and to demand a ransom for not burning the town. We've seen this shit over and over again. This shit is so fucked up. They come into a place, they kick everybody's ass, they take everything that they want out of the town, and then everybody that they know ran away and is like hiding in the woods, they send people out there and tell them, hey, listen, man, we stole all your shit, but we know you have a lot of stuff still hidden and buried around here, so you better dig it the fuck up and bring it to us, or we're going to burn your town down, and you're not even going to have a place to live when we leave, right? So if you want a house to live in when we leave, you better cough up another like 100,000 pieces of 8 or something like that. What's up, damn it, Mandy? Always good to see you. Right, so they dispatched some prisoners into the woods to seek for the rest of the inhabitants and to demand a ransom for not burning the town. The people answered that they had no money left nor plate, but if they would be satisfied with a quantity of maize, they would give them as much as they could. The pirates accepted this, it being then more useful to them than ready money anyway, and agreed that they should pay 4,000 bushels of maize. These were brought in 3 days after. The Spaniards, being desirous to rid themselves of that inhuman sort of people, having laded them on board with the rest of their purchase, they returned to Hispaniola to give account to their leader, Captain Morgan, of all they had performed. So they went down there, man. They were fucking just going for corn. There was 400 pirates, right, in 4 ships and 1 boat. At first, things were dicey. They got becalmed, right? They got stuck in a calm, and everybody saw them, and they started hiding their shit. But as soon as there was wind, some ships that were full of corn left that port and tried to get away from the pirates. They thought they were going to be slick and try and get away from these dudes, and the pirates just fucking nailed them, right? Took their ships, took all their corn. Then they landed, fought with the Spanish a little bit, took some losses, right? But they finally won. They took the town. Everybody was hidden in the fucking woods. They found a bunch of them. And over the next couple of weeks, they just tortured the shit out of these guys until they found out where all of the treasure was hidden. They got the treasure. They tell the people, hey, you're going to have to cough it up. You're going to have to pay us to not burn your fucking town down, right? And the people are like, dude, you got all of our treasure. You got all of our money. Those people you tortured gave up everything. They're like, you know, all we have left is corn. Do you want corn? And the pirates were like, fuck yeah, we want corn. That's why we came here, right? We're getting ready to go on a giant raid with Captain Morgan. We need that corn. So they gave them bushels and bushels of corn. They're like, cool. And they went back to Captain Morgan and said, dude, we win. Great success, right? They're like, not only did we get an insane amount of corn, dude, we hit a whole load on a ship that was coming out of there that was full. It's right there. And they gave us bushels and bushels and bushels of fucking corn to not burn their town down. That shit's over there in that boat. And we got all this treasure to fucking kick things off. I bet Captain Morgan was like, that's my dudes right there, right? They had now been absent 5 weeks on that commission, which long delayed Captain Morgan and had him almost in despair of their not returning, fearing lest they were fallen into the hands of the Spaniards, especially considering the place whereto they went could easily be relieved from Cartagena and Santa Maria if the inhabitants were careful to alarm the country. So he was worried. He was like, dude, I don't know, man. It's been a really long time. It's been over a month. These dudes were just supposed to like run over there, you know, do a quick raid, get some corn and come back. He's like, that place that they went is like not safe, man. I hope they didn't get grabbed by the Spanish. He's like, because they could, if they would have put the alarm out into the country, they'd have had a couple of big cities send a lot of soldiers after them, right? But luckily that didn't happen. On the other hand, he also feared that they might have made some great fortune in that voyage and with it have escaped to some other place. So he's like, okay, well, if they didn't get killed by the Spanish, it's still been over a month. What if these guys made a big lick, got a fucking shit ton full of treasure and just took off, right? So he was paranoid. But again, they were gone 5 weeks. And right, remember, this is fucking 1670. They can't call each other on a cell phone. They can't fucking send a fax. They can't send an email, right? You have to know exactly where on earth a person is. And then you have to send them a letter. And it would have to be by ship. Right? So they were just getting it done and getting home as fast as they could. All right, let's see. But seeing that his ships did return in greater numbers than they departed, he resumed with new courage. This sight causing both in him and his companions infinite joy, especially when they found them full laden with maize, which they much wanted for the maintenance of so many people, for whom they expected great matters under such a commander. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was saying. Not only did they come back, they came back with extra ships that they stole, and those were literally filled with the corn that he asked them to go get. Plus, they got bushels and bushels more. Captain Morgan, having divided all of the corn, as also the flesh, right, all the meat that the hunters went out and got, he divided all of the food up amongst his ships, according to the number of men, and then he concluded to depart. Having viewed beforehand every ship and observed their being well equipped and clean, thus he set sail and stood for Cape Tiburon, where he determined to resolve what enterprise he should take in hand. No sooner were they arrived, but they met some other ships newly come to join them from Jamaica, so that now their fleet consisted of 37 ships, dude. 37 pirate ships altogether on this raid. Altogether, in those 37 ships, there were 2,000 fighting men, besides the mariners and the boys. Remember, the boys, when they talk about the boys in any of these Buccaneer or pirate tales, these are kids that are like 13, 14. Sometimes, if they were a pirate's son, they do have recorded kids as young as 8. On these pirate ships at times, which is literally insane. But again, that usually happened when it was like the son of one of the pirates. But remember, a lot of these kids, when they left England, they left at a young age and they would just hop on a ship at the port. Remember, that's how John Esquemeling got to Tortuga. he was in France. He went down to the port. He got a job with the fucking West Indies Company, right? He got put on a boat. Captain Morgan, when he was like 13 or 14, went down to his local port because he didn't want to be a farmer like everybody else in his family. He literally was just started asking around, found a boat that was going to the Caribbean and happened to be going to Jamaica, and he signed a contract putting himself into servitude, right? Then that just paid for him to get over there. He got given a slave. Remember, he's in servitude, so it's a slave job, but they fed him, gave him a place to live. When that contract was over and he was a free man, just like John Esquemeling, when he got freed from his service, they both literally walked down to the port and joined the Brethren of the Coast. It's unreal. But they did this young. So there were a lot of pirate kids, man, teenagers that were literally 13, 14, 15 years old. And those were the boys. And what their main job was to set things on fire. The boy, like the younger people on a pirate ship, their job, one of their main jobs, right, was literally to set things on fire. So I mentioned before, like when the pirates would take another ship, right, and that ship was better than the one that they were on, what they would do is they would have the boys move everything or help. Obviously, I'm sure the Buccaneers and pirates had to help with some of the heavier shit, but they'd have the boys move everything from their ship over to the better ship, right? Once everything was put over there, they would have the boys go over and set fire to the other ship and then get off of it and back onto the new ship in time before it burned to the water line. A lot of times they would have them blow shit up with fucking grenades and fireballs and stuff like that. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. But what's even more insane, remember I told you a lot of people that don't know these stories are people that are just like hear the Disneyfied versions of these pirate stories or just watch like little simple documentaries. They think pirates only took other ships, right? And they usually envision one big pirate ship sailing by itself, right? Filled with pirates just on that one ship by itself, going through the ocean, finding another boat, chasing it, shooting cannons at it, and taking their treasure and leaving, right? But these pirates, in reality, while they did do that on their own from time to time, certainly there are many, many, many tales, especially later, of pirates that did do that, would just go out solitary and hunt. These pirates did form armies, and they did, like locusts, descend upon entire cities and towns and do massive land raids. And as we continue through this story, you're going to see just how intense this shit becomes with these pirates. There's 2,000 of these pirates right now. 2,000 of them. That's a fucking gigantic army of pirates sailing through the ocean, getting ready to come after a city. All right, here we go. 37 ships, wherein were 2,000 fighting men, besides mariners and boys. The admiral hereof was mounted with 22 great guns and 6 small ones of brass. The rest carried some 20 each, some 16, some 18, and the smallest vessel at least 4, besides which they had great quantities of ammunition and fireballs with other inventions of powder. So they had all kinds of fireballs, other inventions that they'd put together with gunpowder, and they had some large ships with lots of cannon, and it went all the way down. Out of the 37, the smallest one had 4 cannon, and the largest one had 22. 28, actually, it said 22 great guns and 6 small ones of brass. So the largest ship had 28 guns on it. Captain Morgan, having such a number of ships, divided the whole fleet into 2 squadrons, constituting a vice admiral and other officers of the second squadron, distinct from the former. To these he gave letters of patent or commissions to act on manner of hostilities against the Spanish nation, and take what ships they could. either abroad or at sea or in the harbors, as if they were open and declared enemies, as he termed it, of the King of England, his pretended master. This done, he called all of his captains and other officers together and caused them to sign some articles of agreement between them, and in the name of all. Herein it was stipulated that he should have the 100th part of all that was gotten to himself, that every captain should draw the shares of 8 men for the expenses of his ship, besides his own. To the surgeon, besides his pay, 200 pieces of 8 for his chest of medicaments. That's our guy. That's fucking John Esquemeling. He was the barber surgeon for Captain Morgan on his ship. But yeah, this is amazing. He's dividing this all up in like military fashion, and he's giving them all bogus paperwork. He's giving them all bogus fucking paperwork. He's giving them all letters of patent to go out and take foreign nations in the name of the King of England. But it's all bogus. But then he does have them all come together. Like we mentioned earlier, the Brethren of the Coast, they had a lot of rules. You were part of a group, and everyone had to abide by the rules. And everyone had to agree on certain things and sign contracts in advance of when they would go on raids together to seal the deal. And they're talking about that now. You know, he's saying that every captain should get 8 shares instead of just 1. So that way it pays for their ship and all that kind of the expenses of his ship, it says right there. To the surgeon, besides his pay, they're going to give him an extra 200 pieces of 8 for his chest of medicines. To every carpenter, above his salary, 100 pieces of 8. The rewards were settled in this voyage much higher than before. As for the loss of both... Oh, cool. They're going to go through the whole thing here. For the loss of both legs, you would receive 1,500 pieces of 8, or 15 slaves. The choice left to the party. For the loss of both hands, you would receive 1,800 pieces of 8, or 18 slaves. For one leg, whether right or left, 600 pieces of 8, or 6 slaves. For one hand, as much as for a leg. And for the loss of an eye, 100 pieces of 8, or 1 slave. Lastly, to him that in any battle shall signalize himself either by entering first any castle or taking down the Spanish colors and setting up the English, they allotted 50 pieces of 8 for a reward. All which extraordinary salaries and rewards to be paid out of the first spoil they should take, as everyone should occur to be either rewarded or paid. So that's fucking wild, man. But it's like their own insurance system, which I always thought was awesome. Right? It's like their own insurance. So you get hurt on the job, we're going to give you a payment. And they'd all decide what that payment's going to be for each kind of injury. And they're talking about if you lose both legs, you get this much. One leg, this much. But you lose a hand, this much. You lose an eye, this much. But then they have bonuses, which is actually also pretty funny. It says anybody that enters a castle first, right? So anybody that storms the fucking castle and leads the day with bravery, obviously, they're going to give you 50 pieces of 8. Anybody that takes the Spanish flag down and puts up the English flag in its place, they're going to give 50 pieces of 8. So that's pretty cool, too. All right, here we go. This contract now being signed, Captain Morgan commanded his vice admirals and captains to put all things in order to attempt one of these 3 places, either Cartagena, Panama, or Vera Cruz. The pirates held a vote and passed the vote ship by ship, captain to captain, until it returned to the great ship where all the big guys were sitting at the table. The final decision by all of the pirates and buccaneers together, collectively, they decided to go after Panama. The lot fell on Panama because it was the richest of all 3. Though this city being situated at such a distance from the North Sea as they knew not well the approaches to it, they judged it necessary to go beforehand to the Isle of St. Catherine, there to find some people for guides in this enterprise. For in the garrison there are commonly many bandits and outlaws belonging to Panama and the neighboring places, who are very expert in the knowledge of that country. But before they proceeded, they published an act throughout the whole fleet, promising that if they met with any Spanish vessel, the first captain who should take it should have for his reward the 10th part of what should be found in her. Cromel, you want another rundown, Cromel? No problem, man. I got you. Hang on one second. That was the end of that chapter anyway, so that was a great place to ask that question. We're going to be moving into chapter 15 here momentarily, but let me read back the... Cromel wants to go back over the insurance policy when they were writing the contract. Okay, so here we go, Cromel. I got you. Every captain should draw the shares of 8 men instead of 1 to cover the expenses of his ship. To the surgeon, besides his pay, 200 pieces of 8 for his chest of medicines. To every carpenter above his salary, 100 pieces of 8. Okay. For the loss of both legs, 1,500 pieces of 8. For the loss of both hands, 1,800 pieces of 8. For one leg, whether left or right, 600 pieces of 8. For a hand, as much as for a leg. And for the loss of an eye, 100 pieces of 8. So there you go. All right. Chapter 15. Captain Morgan leaves Hispaniola and goes to St. Catherine's, which he takes. So we're on our way now. We're on the mission. We got 2,000 plus pirates, right? 37 ships stocked with food and drink. They've already nabbed a little bit of treasure. Captain Morgan just said to everybody, before we sail, we want everyone to know, because there are so many fucking ships, if we run across any Spanish ships or galleons on our way to where we're going, the first ship that gets them cornered or stopped, they'll get as their prize, in addition to their normal shares, they'll get 1/10 of whatever we find in that ship. So that's pretty cool. They're all about these bonuses, which is cool. Chapter 15, Captain Morgan leaves Hispaniola and goes to St. Catherine's, which he takes. Okay. Captain Morgan and his companions weighed anchor from the Cape of Tiburon December 16th, 1670. 4 days after they arrived in sight of St. Catherine's, now in possession of the Spaniards again, as was said before, to which they commonly banished the malefactors of the Spanish dominions in the West Indies. Here are huge quantities of pigeons. At certain seasons, it is watered by 4 rivers, whereof 2 are always dry in summer. Here is no trade or commerce exercised by the inhabitants, neither do they plant more fruits than what are necessary for human life, though the country would make very good plantations of tobacco, blah, 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 blah. As soon as Captain Morgan came near the island with his fleet, he sent one of his best sailing vessels to review the entry of the river and see if any other ships were there, who might hinder him from landing, as also fearing lest they should give intelligence of his arrival to the inhabitants and prevent his design. Next day, before sunrise, all of the fleet anchored near the island. They anchored in a bay called Aguade Grande. On this bay, the Spaniards had built a battery mounted with 4 pieces of cannon. Captain Morgan landed about 1,000 men in diverse squadrons. Holy shit. 1,000 men marching through the woods, though they had no other guides than a few of his own men who had been there before, under Mansvelt. The same day they came to a place where the governor sometimes resided. Here they found a battery called the Platform, but nobody in it. The Spaniards having retired to the lesser island, which, as was said before, is so near the great one that a short bridge only may conjoin them. This lesser island was so well fortified with forts and batteries around it as might seem impregnable. Hereupon, as soon as the Spaniards perceived the pirates' approach, they fired on them so furiously that they could advance nothing that day, but were content to retreat and take up the rest of their rest in the open fields, which were not strange to those people, being sufficiently used to such kind of repose. Okay, so it says that the pirates came onto the big island, started looking around, but didn't really see anybody. And it turns out that everybody had gone over to the smaller island, which was easier to defend. That had a bunch of forts on it and was like walled up and protected and had cannons and guns everywhere. The Spaniards started shooting at the pirates, and the pirates were like, fuck that. And they literally, because the big island was empty, they just went over and found some fields and laid down and got some sleep and hung out and rested for a while. That's fucking hilarious, man. What most afflicted them was hunger, having not eaten anything that whole day. About midnight it rained so hard that they had much ado to bear it. No other clothes than a pair of seaman's trousers or breeches, and a shirt without shoes or stockings. In this great extremity they pulled down a few thatched houses to make fires. In a word, they were in such a condition that 100 men, indifferently well armed, might easily that night have torn them all in pieces. Next morning, about break of day, the rain ceased, and they dried their arms and marched on. But soon after it rained again, rather even harder than before, as if the skies were melted into water, which kept them from advancing towards the forts where the Spaniards continually fired at them. That shit sucks, man. The pirates were now reduced to great affliction and danger. Through the hardness of the weather and their own nakedness and great hunger, for a small relief here, they found in the fields an old horse, lean and full of scabs and blotches, with galled back and sides. Gross, dude. This they instantly killed and flayed and divided in small pieces among themselves, as far as it would reach, for many could not get a morsel, which they roasted and devoured without salt or bread, more like ravenous wolves than men. The rain not ceasing, Captain Morgan perceived their minds to relent, hearing many of them say they would return on board. Among these fatigues of mind and body, he thought convenient to use some sudden remedy. To this effect, he commanded a canoe to be rigged in haste and colors of truce to be hung out. This canoe he sent to the Spanish governor with his message that if within a few hours he delivered himself and all of his men into his hands, he did by that messenger swear to him and all those that were in his company he would most certainly put them to the sword without granting any quarter. Damn. So Captain Morgan sent a letter he sent one of the pirates down there, probably a few of them. He sent a boat to the Spanish governor waving a white flag so that they would receive their message, right? But the message is, if you guys don't give yourselves up within a few hours, we're going to come in there and fucking kill everybody. And we're not going to grant any quarter. The guy's nuts, man. He's been doing this shit his whole story. Every chapter we've read, there's been a moment like this where Captain Morgan just makes me laugh. You know, he's like, he could be down and out. It could look like it's definitely like just the end. There's no way he can win. And he's still just arrogant about it. He's still totally flagrant and arrogant. It's crazy. In the afternoon, the canoe returned with this answer, that the governor desired 2 hours' time to deliberate with his officers about it, which being passed, he would give his positive answer. The time being elapsed, the governor sent 2 canoes with white colors and 2 people to treat with Captain Morgan. But before they landed, they demanded of the pirates 2 people as hostages. These were readily granted by Captain Morgan, who delivered them 2 of the captains for a pledge of the security required. With this, the Spaniards propounded to Captain Morgan that the governor, in a full assembly, had resolved to deliver up the island, not being provided with sufficient forces to defend it against such an armada. But he desired Captain Morgan would be pleased to use a certain strategy of war for the better saving of his own credit and the reputation of his officers both abroad and at home, which should be as follows. Oh, here we go. See, so it's crazy, man. Captain Morgan comes out again on top. Like, he knows he can win this one, right? He's literally got 2,000 pirates. He's got 37 ships. He sent 1,000 men onto the beach, right, to go onto the big island. There's fucking nobody there. They walk around, they see this small island, and that's where everybody had taken off to, and they're all like fortified. They got a couple like fortresses. They've got cannons everywhere and walls and shit, and they're firing on the pirates constantly. It's raining. These guys are miserable. They don't have shoes on, right? They're just fucking standing around, getting rained on for hours. They're getting pissed off. They're just constantly getting fired on. They can't get close to this fort. So Captain Morgan sends a canoe over there and says, hey, listen, you might think you've got us pinned down, but there's a lot of us. So if you don't give yourself up and give up the fucking island within a few hours, we're just going to storm you guys and fucking kill everybody. The governor actually says, okay, you win, right? There's no way that we can defeat you guys. You're a fucking giant armada. You got 37 ships, right? Mad guns, 2,000 pirates. He says, fine, we'll give in, but you've got to do something for me. This Spanish governor says to Captain Morgan, we'll surrender, but you've got to make it look like, you know, we fought, like you were really kicking our ass. You're going to have to do something to where it look, you know, we can save our honor and save our respect. We don't want anybody to think that we just gave up without a fight, right? So this is what he wants him to do. It says he wants that Captain Morgan would come with his troops by night to the bridge that joined the lesser island to the great one, and there attack the fort of St. Jerome. That at the same time, all of his fleet would draw near the castle of Santa Teresa and attack it by land. Landing in the meanwhile more troops near the battery of St. Matthew, that these troops being newly landed should by this means intercept the governor as he endeavored to pass to St. Jerome's fort, and then take him prisoner. Come on, man. He wants him to land pirates like literally all around the small island in smaller doses, right? And then take him personally prisoner. It's like, dude, just make this easy. Fire some cannons. We'll fire some cannons back at you, right? And we'll call it a day. Everybody will say that we fought. You'll just open up the fucking gate. We'll walk in. We won't kill you guys. We'll sit down. We'll have a coffee, right? Or in their case, they would probably drink tea. But either way, you get what I'm saying. You know, we'll have a rum, right? We'll have a rum together. Fangool all this like parking pirates like literally all around your island at different forts and shit for no reason. You already surrendered, right? That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, so then take him prisoner, using that formality as if they forced him to deliver the castle, and that he would lead the English into it under color of being his own troops. That on both sides there should be continual firing, but without bullets. Come on, dude. Or at least into the air so that no side might be hurt. That's fine. That thus having obtained two such considerable forts, the chiefest of the isle, he need not take care for the rest, which must fall, of course, into his hands. It's such a long-winded way to fucking say all of this. So the governor's just like, I'll give up, but you've got to make it look like we didn't just give in, right? You've got to make it look like we fought. And then he goes through this stupid long plan of, look, you've got to park pirates like at all these different forts around the island, you know, we're going to fucking just like dry shoot, right? Our cannons. We're just going to make big puffs of smoke and loud noises and stuff like this. He says, then, you know, crash the island, take me prisoner. And then I'll lead you into the main castle in this like grand, extravagant way. So everybody knows that you took it. Bro, fangool all that. That's so dumb, right? Just fire some guns on both sides, get it over with. Open, like I said before, open the gate. We're coming in. We'll have a rum. But Captain Morgan's like, fuck it, man. If you're going to surrender, I'll do whatever you want, right? These propositions were granted by Captain Morgan on condition that they should see them faithfully observed. Otherwise, they should be used with the utmost rigor. So he says, you guys better not fuck around, right? You guys want me to go through all this shit, park pirates in different places around, spread them around. all these different forts and stuff like that. He says, you guys better not try and like actually fight, or we're literally gonna mow you the fuck down in a really bad way. It's gonna be, I'm gonna do this in a nasty way. Don't make me be nasty, right? He's like, don't make me chop everybody literally into pieces and set you guys on fire. Right. So he says, do as you promised to do. And then he took their lead. He took his guys back. They took their guys back. And the Spanish returned to go give account of the negotiation to the governor. They say, fine, Captain Morgan will go along with it. So presently after, Captain Morgan commanded the whole fleet to enter the port and his men to be ready to assault. That night, the castle of Jerome had to fall. Thus the false battle began, with incessant firing from both the castles against the ships, but without bullets, as was agreed. Then the pirates landed and assaulted by night the lesser island, which they took as also both fortresses, forcing the Spaniards in appearance to fly to the church. Before this assault, Captain Morgan sent word to the governor that he should keep all of his men together in one body. Otherwise, if the pirates met any straggling Spaniards in the streets, they would certainly shoot them. That's fucking hilarious. He goes, man, you better keep everybody around you, like that you like. Right? He's like, make sure you keep everybody you like, or anybody that's like near and dear to you or important to you. Make sure you keep them close to you, man. Because I can't control my guys, and we hate the fucking Spanish, right? If they see you guys straggling through the streets and they think they can just pop one of you fuckers and nobody's gonna know, he's like, dude, they're just gonna kill your guys. So make sure you keep everybody important that you like around you. That's fucking hilarious, right? I think it's funny. Maybe I just have a dark sense of humor. I don't know. All right, so he sends word to the governor, says, hey, keep everybody around you, right? Don't let anybody that you like go walking through the streets, because we are pirates and we hate the Spanish and we're going to kill them if we see them. This island now being taken by this unusual strategy and all things put in order, the pirates made a new war against the poultry, cattle, and all sorts of food that they could find for some days, scarce thinking of anything else than to kill, roast, and eat, and make what good cheer they could. If wood was wanting, they simply pulled down the houses and made fires with the timber, as had been done before in the field. Fucking guys are nuts, man. The next day, they numbered all of the prisoners they had taken upon the island, which were found to be in all 459 people, men, women, and children, 190 soldiers of the garrison, and 40 inhabitants who were married, 43 children, 34 slaves belonging to the king, with 8 children, 8 bandits, 39 more slaves belonging to private people, with 27. Okay, whatever. It's breaking them all. It's fucking stupid. The pirates disarmed all of the Spaniards and sent them out immediately to the plantations to seek for more food, leaving the women in the church to exercise their devotions. Soon after, they reviewed the whole island and all of the fortresses thereof, which they found to be 9 in all. The fort of St. Jerome next to the bridge had 8 great guns of 12, 6, and 8 pounds carriage. All right, we're just going to go through a list of guns. They're going through the town to see what they have. They found 60 muskets. That's pretty handy. They found 6 pipes of muskets, whatever that fucking means. I guess maybe the pipes that hold the gunpowder. 8 pounds of carriage. Rooms filled with ammunition. So they lucked out, man. They got on this island. They got all kinds of guns and cannons, fucking ammunition. And that was just in that first fortress. The second fortress, called St. Matthew, had 3 guns of 8 pounds each. The third and chiefest, named St. Teresa, had 20 great guns of 18, 12, 8, and 6 pounds, with 10 pipes of muskets like before, and 90 more muskets in a room, besides more ammunition. So they lucked the fuck out. Big time. All right, now it's describing like the thickness of all these places. All right, let's skip through here. They found 30,000 pounds of powder in the storehouses, along with even more ammunition. 30,000 pounds of powder. This was all carried by the pirates instantaneously on board their fleet. All of the guns they decided not to take were stopped up and nailed, and the fortresses were demolished, except that of St. Jerome, where the pirates kept guard and resistance. Captain Morgan inquired for any banditti from Panama or Puerto Bello, and 3 were brought to him. These 3 men pretended to be very expert in the avenues of those parts. He asked them to be his guides and show him the securest ways through the jungles to Panama, which if they performed, he promised them equal shares in the plunder of that expedition, just as if they were members of the Brethren of the Coast. He also promised them their liberty when they arrived in Jamaica. These propositions the banditti readily accepted, promising to serve him very faithfully, especially one of the 3 who was the greatest rogue, thief, and assassin among them, who had deserved rather to be broken alive on the wheel than punished with serving in a garrison. This wicked fellow had a great ascendant over the other 2, and domineered over them as he pleased, they not daring to disobey his orders. Captain Morgan commanded 4 ships and 1 boat to be equipped and provided with necessaries to go and take the castle of Chagres on the river of that name. Neither would he go himself with his whole fleet, lest the Spaniards should be jealous of his farther design on Panama. In these vessels he embarked 400 men to put in execution his orders. Meanwhile, himself remained in St. Catherine's with the rest of the fleet, expecting to hear of their success. So he's got another little side mission getting ready to go down. Right? They just took fucking St. Catherine. That was a wild story. They basically just punked the Spanish. They came up with some weird, I don't know what to call it. I mean, I guess it's a strategy on their part, right? To save some honor. So if anybody hears about what happened, or sees it from anywhere. That's the part that doesn't make sense to me. Like, maybe there's people on the island he needs to make sure, like, don't start telling stories about how they surrendered. We'll go with that, right? They did say that there was 450 people or something like that on the island. So, but again, I think they could have, instead of putting people all, every fort and all this kind of stuff, initially they could have just shot their guns back and forth like they agreed to do, and then just walked onto the island. That would have been a lot easier. But in either case, they got crazy amounts of ammunition and powder, dude, and cannons and guns and stuff off of this island from the forts. Like, insane. In the storehouses, 30,000 pounds of powder. They were like, yep, put that shit on the boat right now. And now I guess he's got like another little side mission, right? So first they went out and they got all the food. And they took that little, right? He sent 400 men that time too. So right out of the gate, before they even left Hispaniola, he sent out 2 teams to go get food and drink, right? And like wine, rum, anything they could lay their hands on. 400 men to go get the corn. While they were out getting corn, they took ships full of corn. Then they took a whole fucking town, got all of their treasure, even more corn, plus a couple of ships, and brought all that shit back. The hunters came back with all kinds of meat, salted, ready to go. They take off. They go to St. Catherine. They make this crazy whole ordeal with the Spanish. They take that island and all 9 of the forts, right? They get all the cannon, all the powder, all the guns, all of their food. And he's like, all right, we're going to stay here in the most secure fort, right? They destroyed the other ones, but there's one fort left on this island, and that's where the pirates are chilling in this fucking fort. It's got 20-foot thick walls and cannons everywhere, right? They're well stocked. Plus, they've got their whole armada of ships chilling in the water right there around this island. So he says, all right, we've got one more thing we need to do. I'm going to send down another 400 pirates. I want you to go take the castle of Chagres. I guess that's how you say it. I don't know. That's what I'm going to say. Chapter 16 is Captain Morgan takes the castle of Chagres with 400 men sent for this purpose from St. Catherine's. All right, time to hit the bowl on the in-between. New chapter. You get a drink. Hit this bowl a couple times. Carmel says, that governor is nuts. Yeah, I got you, man. Like, I understand where you're coming from. Like, the pirates could have done anything, right? They could have killed them. They didn't. They didn't enslave them. They didn't fucking kill them. They didn't harm them. They kept up their word. They did destroy the other forts so that the Spanish couldn't try and take them back or hide away in them. But so far, everybody's chilling. I mean, it says that when they were eating and drinking and getting all fucked up, we've seen that in everything. Like, whenever these pirates land someplace and the first night after they take the town, they get wasted, right? These are pirates and buccaneers after all. These guys, when they finally take a city and it's just them walking the streets, literally walking in and out of any house they want to, any business they want to, they just get absolutely wasted. And it says that they were like, when they wanted to eat something and they didn't have a fire and they couldn't find wood anywhere close by, they would just tear down one of the houses and use the wood from that to fucking cook with. That is insane, dude. You're literally surrounded by forests. I mean, it's crazy. They would just tear down a fucking house, man. Crazy stuff. All right. Just sip my drink. We'll continue on with this next chapter. All right. Chapter 16, Captain Morgan takes the castle of Chagris with 400 men sent for this purpose from St. Catherine's. All right, here we go. Captain Morgan, sending this little fleet to Chagris, chose for vice admiral one Captain Broadley, who had been long in those quarters and committed many robberies on the Spaniards. He was there with Mansvelt when he took the island of St. Catherine many years ago and was before related and therefore was thought a fit person for this exploit, his actions likewise having rendered him famous among the pirates and their enemies, the Spaniards. Captain Broadley, being made commander, in 3 days after his departure arrived in sight of the said castle of Chagris by the Spaniards called St. Lawrence. This castle is built on a high mountain at the entry of the river, surrounded by strong palisades or wooden walls filled with earth. This secures them as well as the best wall of stone or brick. The top of this mountain is in a manner divided into 2 parts, between which is a ditch 30 feet deep. The castle has but one entry, and that by a drawbridge over this 30-foot deep ditch. To the land it has 4 bastions, and to the sea 2 more. The south part is totally inaccessible through the cragginess of the mountain. The north is surrounded by the river. This river is very broad. At the foot of the castle, or rather mountain, is another strong fort with 8 great guns commanding the entry of the river. Not much lower are 2 other batteries, each of 6 pieces, to defend likewise the mouth of the river. At one side of the castle are 2 great storehouses of all sorts of warlike ammunition and merchandise brought there from the island and the surrounding country. Near these houses is a high pair of stairs hewn out of the rock to mount to the top of the castle. On the west is a small port not above 7 or 8 fathoms deep, fit for small vessels and of very good anchorage. Besides, before the castle, at the entry of the river, is a great rock, scarce to be described, but at low tides. Well, this place is dangerous, man. This place is dangerous. This fucking place, the main fort is built into the mountain, literally with a staircase that goes to the top that's built out of the mountain. It's literally hewn into the mountain, the staircase is. Like, this is nuts, right? And the rest of it's like all craggy and fucked up. And then there's another fort like down closer to the water
with even more guns. They've got bastions of people and guns all around it, right, in every direction. Plus is like almost like a seawall. They've built up these huge palisades that are like these giant walls built of wood and filled with dirt. This is a hell of a castle, man. This is a hell of an right. This will be an exploit for sure if they can get this done. If not, it'll be a disaster. All right, let's see. Oh, and it says on top of it, when you're coming up there, there's a giant fucking rock in the ocean that you can't see unless it's low tide. That's fucking nuts, man. No sooner had the Spaniards perceived the pirates, but they fired incessantly at them with the biggest of their guns. They came to an anchor in a small port about a league from the castle. Next morning, very early, they went ashore and marched through the woods to attack the castle on that side. This march lasted till 2 o'clock in the afternoon before they could reach the castle. By reason of the difficulties of the way and its mire and dirt, and though their guides served them very exactly, they came so nigh to the castle at first that they lost many of their men by shot, they being in an open place without cover. This much perplexed the pirates, not knowing what course to take, for on that side of necessity they must make the assault, and being uncovered from head to foot, they could not advance one step without danger. Besides that, the castle, both for its situation and strength, made them much doubt of success, but to give it over they dared not, lest they should be reproached by their companions. So their guides were leading them up there, and they led them exactly where they asked to go. They said that they wanted to assault the castle on this certain side, on a land side, right? Their guides are like, cool, and took them there, but they got so close to the fucking walls that a lot of the pirates started getting shot. And the pirates didn't know what to do. They didn't know what, like right away. They were like, fuck, man. Should we try a different side of the castle? Should we just try and storm these people? Should we try and like build up some ditches or walls or some shit, right? But right now they were kind of like, man, I don't know if we can win from here. But nobody wanted to give it. It says nobody wanted to give up because they didn't want to be reproached by their companions, right? So at last, after many doubts and disputes, resolving to hazard the assault and their lives desperately, they advanced directly towards the castle with their swords in one hand and fireballs in the other. Here we go. This is just like Maracaibo again, man, where they just did not run. They went straight towards the danger and like locusts took it the fuck over. Let's do that again. That's a great paragraph right there. That's a great paragraph. At last, after many doubts and disputes, resolving to hazard the assault and their lives desperately, they advanced towards the castle with their swords in one hand and fireballs in the other. The Spaniards defended themselves very briskly, ceasing not to fire at them continually, crying, "Come on, you English dogs, enemies to God and our king, and let your other companions that are behind come on too. You shall not get to Panama this route." The pirates, making some trial to climb the walls, were forced to retreat, resting themselves until night. This being come, they returned to the assault, to try, by the help of their fireballs, to destroy the pales before the wall. And while they were about it, they happened a very remarkable accident. This accident occasioned their victory. One of the pirates, oh, this is so fucking cool. One of the pirates being wounded with an arrow in his back, which pierced his body through, he pulled the arrow out of himself boldly at the side of his breast, and winding a little cotton about the tip, he put it into his musket and shot it back to the castle. But the cotton, being kindled by the powder, fired 2 or 3 houses in the castle, being thatched with palm leaves. which the Spaniards perceived not so soon as was necessary, for this fire, meeting with a parcel of powder, blew it up, thereby causing great ruin and no less consternation to the Spaniards, who were not able to put a stop to it, having not seen it in time. Dude, that's amazing. That's amazing. The Spanish hit one of the pirates right in the chest with an arrow, and it went all the way through him. And this crazy bastard pulled the fucking arrow out of himself, wound some cotton around it, put it in his musket, and fired it back at the fucking Spanish. The cotton caught fire, and when it landed, there was some houses in there that had palm leaves for roofs, and it fucking caught that shit on fire, and that blew up a bunch of powder and exploded everywhere. The pirates, perceiving the effect of the arrow and the misfortunes of the Spaniards, were infinitely glad, and while they were busied in quenching the fire, which caused a great confusion for want of water, the pirates took this opportunity, setting fire likewise to their palisades. The fire, thus seen at once in several parts about the castle, gave them a great advantage against the Spaniards, many breaches being made by the fire among the pales, great heaps of earth falling into the ditch. Then the pirates, climbing up, got over into the castle, though those Spaniards who were not busy about the fire cast down many flaming pots full of combustible matter and odious smells, which destroyed many of the English. That's fucking terrible. So the pirates just stormed the walls, right? Once that shit exploded and there was fires going on, they started setting fire to more stuff, right, to get the Spaniards even more freaked out. And that's when they made their big push up and over the wall. But while they were going up and over the wall, the Spanish that were at the top were literally dumping out flaming pots of combustible matter and odious smells all down on the people on the ground underneath the wall and trying to climb up. That's fucking horrible, dude. Melted the skin right off of those bastards, I bet. Caught a bunch of them on fire and shit. Who knows what was in that stuff? The Spaniards, with all their resistance, could not hinder the palisades from being burnt down before midnight. Meanwhile, the pirates continued in their intention of taking the castle. And though the fire was very great, they would creep on the ground as near as they could and shoot amidst the flames against the Spaniards. Here we go with that Buccaneer shit again. These guys are always sniping people the fuck out. Whenever they talk about these guys that are like shooting with rifles, any of these pirate tales we're talking about, these guys that are shooting with rifles, these are like the old salty buccaneers that were the original stock of hunters in Tortuga and Hispaniola, like the original pirates before they were even they called each other buccaneers. These are the guys that are just expert shots. So whenever we hear about something like this, where these guys, it says, and though the fire was very great, they would creep on the ground as near as they could and shoot amidst the flames against the Spaniards on the other side, and thus killed many of them from the walls. When you hear shit like that, it's the old buccaneers, man. They put that squad in there, and those guys were like special forces, man, with those rifles. All right. When day was come, they observed all the movable earth that lay between the pales to be fallen into the ditch. So they started filling the ditch up with all that dirt that was in the palisades. So that now those within the castle lay equally exposed to them as those without, as had been on the contrary before. Whereupon the pirates continued shooting very furiously and killed many more Spaniards, for the governor had charged them to make good those posts, answering to the heaps of earth fallen into the ditch, and caused the artillery to be transported to the breaches. The fire within the castle still continued. The pirates from abroad did what they could to hinder its progress by shooting incessantly against it. One party of them was employed only for this, while another watched all the motions of the Spaniards. About noon, the English gained a breach, which the governor himself defended with 25 soldiers. Here was made a very courageous resistance by the Spaniards, with muskets, pikes, stones, and swords. But through all these, the pirates fought their way till they gained the castle. The Spaniards who remained alive cast themselves down from the castle into the sea, choosing rather to die thus, few or none surviving the fall, than to ask quarter for their lives. That shit is crazy, man. So a lot of these Spanish guys that fucking survived the assault threw themselves off of the mountain into the ocean instead of begging for mercy and becoming like, I don't know. I mean, they wouldn't have been slaves. They would. I mean, they might have got sold. They might have just become prisoners until they left. The pirates do that a lot, right? Too. We've seen that in all these stories. Like when they leave, they just like, okay, cool, you guys are good now, you know, fuck off. They just leave all the fucking prisoners and shit like that there. So that's insane, though, man. The governor himself retreated to the Corps de Garde, before which were placed 2 pieces of cannon. Here he still defended himself, not demanding any quarter until he was killed with a musket shot in the head. Damn, the governor fought till the very end. He got behind 2 cannons, and they were firing the cannons, and then finally one of those buccaneers sniped him in the head with a musket shot. The governor now being dead, and the Corps du Garde surrendering, they found remaining in it alive 30 men, whereof scarce 10 were not wounded. These informed the pirates that 8 or 9 of their soldiers had deserted and were gone to Panama to carry news of their arrival and invasion. These 30 men alone remained of 314 that were in the castle. Wow, among which not one officer was found alive. These were all made prisoners and compelled to tell whatever they knew of their designs. So anybody that was alive became a prisoner, just like I said. And they were compelled to tell whatever they knew of their designs and enterprises. Among other things, that the governor of Panama had notice sent him 3 weeks ago from Cartagena that the English were equipping a fleet at Hispaniola with a design to take Panama. So they just found out that the governor of Panama got the heads up 3 weeks ago that they were coming. All right, let's see. All right. The governor of Panama had notice sent him 3 weeks ago from Cartagena that the English were equipping a fleet at Hispaniola with a design to take Panama. And besides, that this had been discovered by a deserter from the pirates at the River de la Hacha, where they had victualed. Oh, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. Snitch. That's fucked up. Says, fuck that, man. That's messed up. This had been discovered by a deserter from the pirates at the River de la Hacha, where they had victualed. That's when they got the corn and they took all that treasure. One of their pirate brethren fucking deserted them and went and warned the fucking people. That's fucked up. That upon this, the governor had sent 164 men to strengthen the garrison of the castle Chagris with much provision and ammunition. The ordinary garrison whereof was only 150 men, but these made up 214 men very well armed. Besides this, they declared that the governor of Panama had placed several ambushes along the river of Chagris, and that he waited for them in the open fields of Panama with 3,600 men. Here we go, dude. That's crazy. So when the pirates went to go get that corn and took that town, one of the pirates fucking deserted the mission and all of his brethren, right? And he ratted them out that they were going to come to Panama. They figured they were going to have to come and take this fort at Chagris, right? So that they could pass safely with all those ships, right? They've got an armada, 37 ships they've got. So they have to take this port the fort, and the Spanish know it. So the governor of Panama sent another 240 guys, soldiers, to the castle of Chagres to help them defend it. The pirates killed everybody except for a handful. There's 30 Spanish left that at the end of it they let live and took prisoner and just questioned. And by questioning them, they found out about this deserter, that he got the word to the governor about 3 weeks ago that the governor had sent those 240 guys to the castle of Chagres, that he had also set up all kinds of ambushes in the jungle between there and Panama, and that he had another 3,600 soldiers in Panama waiting in an open field for a pitched battle. Now remember, there's 2,000 pirates, right? And this guy in Panama is talking about he's got 3,600 in an open field ready for a pitched battle, right? And that's after all of the ambushes and shit like that are set up for these guys in the jungle. Now, when we say the jungle, we're talking about, dude, it's hard to even today, the jungles in Panama and Darien are amongst like the wildest ever. Like when you start talking about when they have to go through Darien, this is in 1670. This is like, again, even today, some of the densest jungle you could pass through. It's got all manner of everything that's dangerous, right? Not to mention the Indians of Darien. Now they hate the Spanish, so they end up helping the pirates, but it's they still do deceive the pirates every now and again. You know what I mean? They, for the most part, they were honest companions, man, because they hated the Spanish and they wanted them gone, and the pirates hated the Spanish too, so they became friendly in that way. Yeah, but when you start talking about having to cross the Darien in 1670, it's absolute insanity. It's madness. It's madness. The fucking rivers, the jungle, the animals, the insects, the reptiles, forget about it. Forget about it. And then you've got to cross that to get to Panama, and then you have to cross it again with all the shit that you stole to get to the other side, to get back to your ships. Absolutely insane. The back half of which is where we end up getting, remember I told you there's 4 books that are authentic tales of people that were there for some of this stuff. One of them, his name is Lionel Wafer. After they take Panama on their way back is when Lionel Wafer's tale starts, and it lasts about a year while he's living with the Indians in Darien because he can't continue on. It's a mad story, and we're going to get to it. And we're going to hear about him in this tale. I've said before, people haven't listened to all the episodes. Go back and listen to them. You'll hear me talk about the fact that the people that wrote these 4 authentic accounts knew each other. They were literate. They came across each other in different places a lot because they rode with like the same pirate crews. You know what I mean? Some of them are smaller tales. As I mentioned before, we're reading the longest one, which is from John Esquemeling. Lionel Wafer has another. You'll hear about it. When you read all 4 of the books, you hear about each of these other guys at different points in their story. It's the coolest thing about reading all 4 is because you get different perspectives, and these guys run into each other and talk about each other. And it's fucking nuts, right? It's very cool. Okay, let's get back to our tale here. All right. The taking of this castle cost the pirates excessively in comparison to what they were normally would be. Okay, another long ass way to put this. They took the castle, but it cost them a lot more guys than they were used to losing in a fight. And their toil and labor was greater than at the conquest of the Isle of St. Catherine. For numbering their men, they had lost above 100, besides 70 wounded. They commanded the Spanish prisoners to cast the dead bodies of their own men from the top of the mountain into the seaside and to bury them. The wounded were carried to the church, of which they made a hospital, and where they also shut up all of the women. Captain Morgan remained not long behind at St. Catherine's after taking the castle of Chagris, of which he had noticed presently. But before he departed, he embarked all the provisions that could be found, with much maize or Indian wheat, and all the other food he could, whereof also is made bread in those ports. He transported great store of provisions to the garrison of Chagris, whensoever they could be got. At a certain place they cast into the sea all of the guns they couldn't take with them, designing to return and leave that island well garrisoned to the perpetual possession of the pirates. But he ordered all the houses and forts to be fired, except the castle of St. Teresa, which he judged to be the strongest and securest wherein to fortify himself at his return from Panama. So they just set up two bases on their way in and on their way out, right? They've got St. Catherine, right? The big island had some stuff on it, food growing and shit like that. But the smaller island was the one with the big forts, right? There was 9 forts on the smaller island. They destroyed all the other forts except for the one that they wanted to keep for themselves. The one with the thickest walls and the most guns, right? That way nobody else could come onto the island and fight against them and fortify themselves. This way they were all destroyed. Now that they have St. Catherine, then they went further and they got the castle of Chagris, right? Another insanely well-defended location. Right? Remember, the main fort's built into the mountain, and the fucking stairs that go up to the top of it are carved into the mountain. Then there's a smaller fort down closer to the water, right? On a river, or the mouth of a river, easily guarded. But that fort down there is like crazy, filled with cannons, and was filled with soldiers, right? They lost to the pirates. There's 2,000 pirates. They came through there and they ended up winning. They set everything on fire and grabbed a hold of everybody and, got information out of them. But they took this castle now. Pirates are there. And now Captain Morgan's like, okay, cool. Well, just like we're keeping that one at St. Catherine, we're keeping this one too. But I want you to destroy all the other smaller like buildings and places like that around here, except for these main forts. And that's what we're going to live in. We're not going to just use them for protection. We're going to live in these forts. The pirates will, right? He says, we're going to stay here so that when we go to Panama on our way back, we've got a place to stop and chill and rest. And then when we continue on, we can stop again in St. Catherine and chill and rest and then divide up all our treasure and stuff, right? Pretty wild. And these are places that he can defend. Most importantly, these are places that he can defend. So once he's raised the alarms and he's gone through Panama and robbed them and pillaged and burnt everything down, the Spanish are obviously going to send everything they possibly can at these dudes, right? So he needs to be able to move in a certain way, and he needs to be able to get into these forts and shit like that and fight off any enemies or anybody that's coming after him while he's escaping. It was pretty fucking brilliant. What's up, Dustin? Okay. So they just took all the wounded to the church, right? The pirates took all the wounded, even the Spanish that are wounded. They took them into the church. They made it into a hospital to take care of them. They threw all the bodies out of there because that was unhealthy. So, right, they threw them all off of the mountain onto the seaside and made the guys go down and bury them. And they put all the women in the I think another church, but to keep them safe. And then Captain Morgan remained not long behind at St. Catherine's after taking the castle of Chagris, of which he was just told. But before he departed, he embarked all the provisions that could be found, with much maize or Indian wheat, and anything else they could make bread out of. He transported great store of provisions to the garrison of Chagris, right? So he's provisioning these places too. They ended up with so much corn and so much meat. And these places that he took had more food, had more resources. So he's making sure that both of these places are stocked, right? So as they move through and they come back, then they'll have food. Again, this guy's pretty brilliant in the way he's planned all this out. At a certain place, they cast into the sea all the guns, like I said, belonging to the other forts that they destroyed, anything that they weren't going to keep, with the idea that they were going to keep the islands that they took well garrisoned to the perpetual possession of the pirates. But he ordered all the houses and forts around the one fort they decided to keep to be destroyed and set on fire. In this case, with Chagris, it's the castle of Saint Teresa, which he judged to be the strongest and most secure upon his return from Panama. Having completed his arrangements, he took with him all the prisoners of the island and then sailed for Chagris himself from St. Catherine, where he arrived in 8 days. Here the joy of the whole fleet was so great when they spied the English colors on the castle that they minded not their way into the river, so that they lost 4 ships. Remember, they were talking about before that one of the hazards of this castle is that there's fucking huge rock in the ocean that you can't see it and you don't know where it is unless it's low tide. So these people were all, remember, there's 37 pirate ships with 2,000 pirates. They're all so fucking excited, right? They just took these 2. They've been having a successful run so far, right? They even got themselves a bit of treasure. They found out that they've got a deserter, but they'll deal with that, right? They know the people in Panama know what the fuck is happening. They know they've got word, but they'll deal with that. They're having a pretty successful run. They've taken some castles, they've ate, they've drank, they've got some treasure. Now they're sailing through the ocean. They come up on their next castle that's been taken. Their brethren of the coast already took this castle in advance and put up the English colors. They're bringing them food. All the pirates are fucking ecstatic. Some of them aren't paying attention, and 4 of the pirate ships ran into this fucking rock in the ocean. It says they were able to save all the men and the goods on the ships. The ships, too, had been preserved, if a strong northerly wind had not risen, which cast them on the rock at the entry of the river. Okay. Captain Morgan was brought into the castle with great acclamations of all of the pirates, both of those within and those newly come. Having heard the manner of the conquest, he commanded all the prisoners to work and repair what was necessary, especially to set up new palisades around the forts of the castle. There were still in the river some Spanish vessels, called Chatin, serving for transportation of merchandise up and down the river and to go to Portobello in Nicaragua. These commonly carried 2 great guns of iron and 4 small ones of brass. These vessels they seized with 4 little ships they found there and all of their canoes. In the castle they left a garrison of 500 men, and in the ships in the river 150 more. This done, Captain Morgan departed for Panama at the head of 1,200 men. He carried little provisions with him, hoping to provide himself sufficiently among the Spaniards whom he knew lie in ambush by the way. So, man, he's got to leave people in these forts. I get it, right? So that the Spanish can't come through that fort and get their back and like take the fort back, because he's depending on, right? He just provisioned these forts. He's depending on that food being there when they get back, right? He says, well, we already know that we had a deserter. We know that the governor in Panama has word of our coming. We know that he set up these ambushes all through the jungle on our way to Panama. He says, so that means they've got food and drink, right? He says, we can eat out of the jungle, right? Anything that we can find in the jungle. And we can depend on the fact that there are these ambushes, these groups of men out there that obviously have food and drink. He's like, so we can take their fucking food and drink, and between that and what we can get out of the jungle, we'll be fine. So he just left the bulk of their food at his 2 getaway spots, right? The 2 fortresses that he just took in St. Catherine and in Chagris. He left 500 pirates of his 2,000, right? He had 2,000 pirates. He left 500 of them in Chagris and in St. Catherine, split between the 2 of them, plus another 150 in boats sailing around, making sure that they're not going to get that they don't see any Spanish ships, galleons, or armadas coming. So he's got 1,200-ish guys, right? Because he did have some wounded that are in that church, right? But so it says he's got 1,250, right? Is that what it says? The head of 1,200. Okay, it says he left for Panama at the head of 1,200 men. Now remember, they have to go through the jungle. They have to go through all these ambushes that are in the jungle. And then when they get to the other side, there's a large field that divides the jungle from the walls and gates of Panama. And in that field, the governor of Panama has said that he has 3,600 soldiers waiting for pitched battle. Pitched battle means two armies going hand to hand, head to head, hand to hand, right? Like crazy. And he's got 1,200 now. So there's 1,200 pirates starting their march through the jungle towards Panama. And there's 3,600 waiting for them on the other side, and who knows how many on the in-between. And they're not even bringing that much food with them. They've got 1,200 pirates, and they're not bringing that much food with them. They're depending, Captain Morgan is depending on anything they can get from the jungle and off of the people that are supposedly set up in these ambushes. I mean, you can tell me if you think that's a good idea or not. I get trying to travel light as possible because you know you're going through one of the most insane, hard tracks, like the most insanely hard tracks that a human could take at that time. You know, to go through the fucking jungles of Darien, especially in 16th century. Now it's insane. Right now, in our year, in our month, in our day, right now. For you to try and go through the jungles of Darien would be considered fucking nuts, right? And this is back then when it's filled still with all manner of fucking crazy animals that want to eat you, poison you, sting you, kill you. And then you have the Indians of Darien, which with them, the only thing that's keeping you alive and keeping them friendly is your mutual hatred for the fucking Spanish, right? And at any time they can screw you. They can decide to steal your shit. They can leave you in the middle of the fucking jungle if they want, right? If you fucking offend them or piss them off or mistreat them in any way. Or again, if they just want to keep some of your shit, they can literally lead you into the middle of the jungle and fucking leave you there. And that did happen sometimes. Not very often. They usually were, like I said, they were honest companions and good companions to the pirates most of the time. But there are plenty of stories of people getting let out there and just left. Let's say, Dustin, I'm surprised they were able to salvage the ship and the goods. Usually back then, if the tide was high, when you hit a rock in a ship like that, you were screwed. Yeah, they said it was the wind that helped blow them, like get them off. So I guess it was manageable damage, right? I really don't know, man. That's what it says. They were able to save the men and the goods, and they were even able to save the ships off of the rock when the wind blew. I think it's northwest or something like that, northwest or northeast. Yep. All right. It's time for me to grab a smoke. I'm going to mute this for just a moment, and I will be, and then I'll be right back. Hang on. All right. Let's go grab a smoke real quick, and then we'll get back to, we'll do one more chapter and call it a night. We're coming up on almost 2 hours. We've made it through a few chapters. I think we'll go for, even if we don't make it all the way through another chapter, I think we'll go for like another 20 minutes or something like that. This tale is extreme, and it's one of the best ever told. One of the craziest real actions that the pirates ever took, ever, hands down. One of the greatest stories ever. So we're going to continue on for a little while. We'll give it another 20 minutes or so after I grab my smoke here. Let's just looking at the chat here real quick. Looks like what, Dustin, you had a comment get like taken down by the YouTube algorithm gods or what? Oh yeah, you said, okay, I got you. Yeah, you said something. Apparently YouTube doesn't like you. That's bullshit. Our freedom of speech does not exist on YouTube. Does not exist here. Yeah, even saying the wrong words in your show or like live show or content, their little algorithm gods will just slap you down. It's pretty wild, man. Pretty un-American. I've always said, man, people don't have the right to not be offended. You have the right to change the channel, right? You have the right to listen to something else, change the station, change the show. You do not have the right to not be offended. Yeah, but that shit's pretty amazing so far, man. 2,000 pirates, 37 ships on this mission to Panama. They took St. Catherine first, right? After they got all their food and stuff like that. They went and they took St. Catherine. And they, sorry, I was looking at something real quick. They took St. Catherine, took that fort. It was pretty formidable on its own, but they gave it up. What a weird story, right? They show up. Their men are all getting, like the pirates are just getting rained on and fired on, fucking all day and all night long. Shit sucks. And like Captain Morgan's like, okay, this isn't going to work out. We're going to have to figure out a different way to go about this. So he writes a letter to the commander of that island. We'll just say governor of that island. And he says, listen, man, you've got like 4 hours to just give yourself up and the island up, or we're just going to storm your island like locusts. I've got 2,000 pirates here, 37 ships. We're just going to take your island. And we're going to kill everybody. We're not going to let anybody live. Unless you give up now. The freaking governor writes him back and says, okay, I'll give up. But you got to stage a fight. You got to at least make it look like I put up a fight so I can save some face, right? It's weird. And he tells him, exactly where to land his men, like which forts on the island to take. He says, you got to take me prisoner and walk me down the street. Let me escort you through the gate so everybody can see that we had to surrender, right? We'll fire a lot of shots back and forth, he says. But we won't use bullets. We'll just put the powder in the gun. We'll make big noises and smoke at each other for a while, and everybody will think that we fought. He says, you do that, and the island's yours. I won't really fight you. I'll give up. Captain Morgan goes, whatever, man. Works for me. They got on that island. It was so well fortified and had 9 forts on it. Just in the storehouses, they got 30,000 pounds of black powder. And then in all those forts, they found hundreds of muskets. Hundreds of muskets, all kind of cannon, even more ammunition and powder in all those different forts. Like they really made out, plus the food and the drink. So they just decided to knock down 8 of those forts, right, on the island and keep the strongest one. And they said, this is one of our pirate islands now. This is going to be part of our getaway. They hang out there. Captain Morgan sends 400 more pirates with like some crazy feared pirate captain named Captain Broadley, who had sailed with Mansvelt, who the Spanish were scared to death of. And Captain Morgan sends them all with him after the castle of Chagres, which is actually a castle and a fort. And the castle was built into the side of a mountain with stairs that go to the top built into the mountain. Then the second fort down at the mouth of the river, filled with cannon and soldiers. The pirates take this place after almost losing, but they caught a break and caught some houses on fire. That was nuts, man. So they got led too close to the walls. The Spanish were dumping down all kinds of flaming combustibles and gross liquids on them, catching them on fire and melting their skin off, and a bunch of the pirates were getting shot. And they almost gave up, and they were like, what do we do? One pirate got hit with an arrow that went through him, it said, through his chest, and that crazy bastard pulled the arrow out, wrapped cotton around it, put it in his musket, and shot it back into the fucking Spanish fort, and it landed on one of the little houses that had a palm leaf roof, and it caught fire, and then caught more houses on fire, and then caught the powder on fire and created a huge explosion. So the pirates just started launching fireballs and catching more and more of the town on fire and more of the walls on fire, so the Spanish would freak out, and they started rushing the walls, and again, like locusts, finally made it into the town and took it over. And now they have Chagrin, that castle and that fort. And again, Captain Morgan's leaving these places stocked with people and stocked with food, so that when he hits Panama and comes back, he'll have places that are fortified and protected that have provisions for when the Spanish come after him. He can stop if he needs to and keep himself protected and fight from a fucking fortified position and have food for his men. It's pretty insane, man. 2 different forts on the way back to where they need to go to get back to Hispaniola in Jamaica. But he's decided to not take very much food with him on his way through the jungle to Panama. He wants to travel as light as he possibly can. He's taken 1,200 men with him to face multiple ambushes in a thick jungle, and then 3,600 Spanish at the other side before he can take Panama. Hang on, I'm going to mute this one more second. Hang on one second. All right, there we go. Get a drink. All right. Let's get a bowl packed real quick. Like I said, we'll at least kick off through a little bit of this next chapter, keep the story going for a few before we call it a night. But yeah, all in all, pretty amazing story. Each one of these raids has been amazing. This is the best one, though, by far. I can't wait to read through this. I can't wait. This is one of my favorite stories ever with the pirates. It's just massive and insane. And it's historic. You can still, and I actually, anybody that's listening to this now or listening to this later can look all of this up. There's like cool little videos you can watch on this when the pirates took Panama. You can see old Panama and still see it all fucked up and burned and shit. They literally had to move Panama. They had to move the location of the city of Panama. We're going to get to it. It's fucking insane. But you can look that stuff up now. And people that go on vacation down there that like are into history and take those kinds of vacations, you know, to go see old things. When they go to Panama, you can go to the old, just like I said, you can see videos of it. You can go there and take tours of it. And they tell you all the stories and show you where the fucking pirates came in and what they did and all the stuff. It's nuts, man. It's very cool. All right, let's get this thing packed up real quick. There we go. That'll work. All right. Bam. Let's light this thing on fire. But yeah, I encourage everybody that's listening to this now or listens to this later, like I've said throughout the series, I encourage all of you to look these places up. You know, check out some of the videos on some of these places and some of these stories that I'm telling you from this firsthand account of somebody that was there for all this shit. Remember John Esquemeling, the guy that wrote this book? This is his firsthand account of all of these things. This fucking guy was there for this shit. He was Captain Morgan's barber surgeon. He was on Captain Morgan's ship, right? We talk about there's 37 ships in this armada. You know, each one has a captain. He's got vice admirals and stuff. Our guy, John Esquemeling, is with Captain Morgan. He is his barber surgeon. He is on his ship. Whenever Captain Morgan is marching, he's with his crew, right? That's who this guy is with for all of this tale. And it's absolutely insane that we get to read it, you know, this many years later. It's amazing that it even survived and it got translated, you know, a few times, but it took a while. You know, I think that the first version was in Dutch. He was a Hollander. Then I believe it got translated into French before it was translated into English. It took some time. But yeah, so we're going to be heading into chapter 17 to close out tonight. And this is Captain Morgan departs from Chagres at the head of 1,200 men to take the city of Panama. But again, I encourage everybody, look this stuff up. Look up Old Panama. Look up Maracaibo. Definitely look up Isla de la Vaca or Cow Island off of Haiti. You know, that was the main rendezvous point that all these pirate ships and pirates would meet at when the word was put out that it was time to go a-pirating. You know, the Brethren of the Coast would meet there en masse, right? Just at the top of this chapter, we learned that it's in the description, Dragon. Pirates of Panama by John Esquemeling. But we learned at the top of the chapter. Hang on. Sorry, I got a message. Hang on real quick. All right. Anyway, sorry, I got a message from a friend. I totally forgot what I was saying. We're just going to jump into this last chapter. He's going to be heading to Panama with 1,200 men. Captain Morgan set forth from the castle of Chagres towards Panama, August 18th, 1670. He had with him 1,200 men, 5 boats laden with artillery, and 32 canoes. The first day they sailed only 6 leagues and came to a place called De los Bracos. Here a party of his men went ashore, only to sleep and stretch their limbs, being almost crippled with lying too much, crowded in the boats. Having rested a while, they went abroad to seek food in the neighboring plantations, but they could find none. The Spaniards being fled and carrying with them all they had. This day being the first of their journey, they had such scarcity of food as the greatest part were forced to pass with only a pipe of tobacco without any other refreshment. See, that's what I was talking about. Like, they really need to, they should have brought food with them. That was a bad plan to depend on, because you don't even know, you've got 1,200 guys, right? Like, you don't even know how big these ambushes are going to be. You don't know how much food they're going to have with them. Even if, like, in your best case scenario, right, you run into an ambush. What if it's only 150 guys, a couple hundred guys? What if you get them and you get all of the food and drink they have? It's not enough. It's just not going to be enough, right? And then you're going to have to wait until you can get to the next ambush, or hope that you can kill something in the jungle. Oh, okay, yeah, Dragon. You can. It's also available for free as an audiobook if you want to listen to somebody read it to you while you're on the beach. But it's also the book is free as well because it's old. Obviously, we're talking about this story was written in he pirated from 1668 to 1672. I think this. I'd have to go back to the top of the book, but I think it was first published in like 1675 or some shit like that. So if you go on Project Gutenberg, Gutenberg, That's a great online resource library for all kinds of old manuscripts and books and stuff like that. Some more modern ones too, but it's a great resource for old books when you're doing research and stuff like that. But you can look it up on there, and they have a free copy if you want to read it. Or like I said, they have the audio book also on YouTube. All right, so yeah, like I was saying, I think that was really bad planning, man, for him to. I mean, he had plenty of food. He could have left some food at both forts and taken a good portion with him to make sure that they had enough to fucking survive. They were heading into the jungle, So these guys literally had nothing to eat for a while. All they had was their pipe tobacco. Next day, about evening, they came to a place called Cruz de Juan Galejo. Here they were compelled to leave their boats and canoes, the river being very dry for want of rain, and many trees having fallen into it. The guides told them that about 2 leagues farther, the country would be very good to continue the journey by land. Hereupon they left 160 men on board the boats to defend them, that they might serve for a refuge in necessity. Next morning, being the 3rd day, they all went ashore, except those who were to keep the boats. To these Captain Morgan gave order under great penalties that no man on any pretext whatsoever should dare to leave those boats and go ashore, fearing lest they should be surprised by an ambush of Spanish in the neighboring woods and have their boats taken, the woods which appeared so thick as to seem almost impenetrable. This is what I was talking about, the fucking no, Krumel. I'm on the website literally right now. It's 1T. It's GUTENBERG.org. There's only 1T, bro. But yeah, so he tells these guys that he leaves 60? Yeah, 160 guys he leaves with these boats that brought them there. And he says, under no pretext whatsoever are you to leave these fucking boats and go ashore, because he feared that there could be a surprise ambush from Spaniards in the neighboring woods. That jungle pass, that Darien Pass, dude, I'm telling you, this shit is insane. And he's talking about just the edge of it being so thick as to seem almost impenetrable. This morning, beginning their march, the ways proved so bad that Captain Morgan thought it more convenient to transport some of the men in canoes, though with great labor, to a place farther up the river called Cedro Bueno. Thus they re-embarked, and the canoes returned for the rest, so that about night they all got together at that place. The pirates much desired to meet some Spaniards or Indians, hoping to fill their bellies with their provisions, being reduced to extremity and hunger. See, they still haven't eaten, man. The 4th day, the greatest part of the pirates marched by land, being led by one of their guides. The rest went by water farther up, being conducted by another guide who always went before them, to discover on both sides of the river any of the ambushes. These they had also spies who were very dexterous to give notice of all accidents or of the arrival of the pirates. 6 hours at least before they came. So the Spaniards had spies hanging out here and there, hidden in the trees, so that they would have at least 6 hours notice that they were coming. This day about noon, they came near a post called Tornacavallos. Here the guide of their canoes cried out that he perceived an ambush. His voice caused infinite joy to all of the pirates, hoping to find some provisions to satiate their extreme hunger. But being come to the place, they found nobody in it, the Spaniards having already fled and leaving nothing behind but a few leather bags, all empty, and a few crumbs of bread scattered on the ground where they had eaten. Being angry at this, they pulled down a few little huts, which the Spaniards had made, and fell to eating the leather bags to allay the ferment in their stomachs. which was now so sharp as to gnaw their very bowels. Thus they made a huge banquet upon these bags of leather, diverse quarrels arising concerning the greatest shares. By the bigness of the place, they conjectured about 500 Spaniards had been there, whom finding no food, they were now infinitely desirous to meet, intending to devour some of them rather than perish. That's fucking crazy, dude. So there was no food there. The Spanish had taken all the food, ditched it, so that the pirates would have nothing. All they found there was some leather bags, and they decided to eat those, and there was fucking fights and quarrels. What's up, KD? Fights and quarrels over the biggest pieces of these leather bags for them to eat. And they were so hungry, they hoped that they could just find the Spanish that had left. They said they're going to eat them. He said, we'll just eat the Spanish. Fuck it. We're not going to die. And if they don't have any food, we'll just eat them. I'm looking through the comments real quick. All right, cool. Having feasted themselves with those pieces of leather, they marched on till they came about night to another post called Tornamunni. Here they found another ambush, but as barren as the former. They searched the neighboring woods, but could not find anything to eat, the Spaniards having been so provident as to not leave anywhere the least crumb of sustenance, whereby the pirates were now brought to this extremity. They even chopped down all of the trees which bared or contained any fruit and ran off all of the animals, scaring all the birds away. Shit, it's fucking crazy, man. The Spanish are just drying them out, like forcing them into hunger. They're making sure there's no food. They have plenty of notice of when they're coming, and they just ditch. They fucking take all the food with them. They kill or scare off any animal close by, and they destroy all the natural food on their path. In their path, that's fucking nuts, man. Yeah, Darius does that shit in the Wars of Alexander when he first comes through. When Alexander comes through, crosses the Hellespont. Darius sends word to all the governors of all the provinces that he wants them to basically just like burn any crops that are still growing, anything that can be used as food. He tells them he just wants them to burn it or destroy it. And they're all just like, no, we're not doing that. Fuck that. And he's like, bro, you've got to starve these guys out. You don't understand. He's like, they're bad news. I already had to fucking run from these guys once. You know, so this is like an old tactic for sure. And effective. Absolutely, because these guys are fighting over pieces of leather bags and stuff like that, right? Getting ready to eat people and shit. Here again, he was happy that he had reserved since noon any bit of leather to make his supper of, drinking after it a good draught of water for his comfort. Some who were never out of their mother's kitchens may ask how these pirates could eat and digest those pieces of leather so hard and dry. Whom I answer that they could once experiment what hunger or rather famine is. They would find the way as the pirates did. For they first sliced it in pieces. Then they beat it between two stones and rubbed it, often dipping it in water to make it supple and tender. Lastly, they scraped off the hair and broiled it. Being thus cooked, they cut it into small morsels and ate it, helping it down with frequent gulps of water, which by good fortune they had at hand. It was pretty gnarly. The fifth day about noon, they came to a place called Barbacoa. Here they found traces of another ambush, but the place again totally as unprovided as the former. At a small distance were several plantations, which they searched very narrowly, but could not find any person, animal, or other thing to relieve their extreme hunger. Finally, having ranged about and searched for a long time, they found a grot which seemed to be but lately hewn out of a rock, where were 2 sacks of meal, wheat, and other like things, with 2 great jars of wine and certain fruits called they're plantains. Okay. Captain Morgan, knowing some of his men were now almost dead with hunger and fearing the same of the rest, caused what was found to be distributed among them who were in greatest necessity. Having refreshed themselves with these victuals, with this food, they marched anew with greater courage than ever. Such as were weak were put into the canoes, and those commanded to land that were in them before. Thus they prosecuted their journey till late at night, when coming to a plantation, they finally took up their rest, but without eating anything again, for the Spanish, as before, had swept away all manner of provisions. The sixth day they continued their march, part by land and part by water. Howbeit they were constrained to rest very frequently, both for the ruggedness of the way and their extreme weakness, which they had endeavored to relieve by eating leaves of trees and green herbs or grass. Such was their miserable condition. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do, right? You got to do what you got to do. They're eating leaves of trees and green herbs and grass. This day at noon they arrived at a plantation where a barn full of maize. Immediately they beat down the doors and ate it dry, as much as they could devour. Then they distributed a great quantity, giving every man a good allowance. Thus provided, and prosecuting their journey for about an hour, they came to another ambush. This they no sooner discovered, but they threw away their maize with the sudden hopes of finding all things in abundance. But they were much deceived, meeting neither Indians nor food nor anything else. But they saw on the other side of the river about 100 Indians, who all fleeing escaped. Some few pirates leaped into the river to cross it and try to take any of the Indians, but in vain. For being much more nimble than the pirates, they not only baffled them, but killed 2 or 3 with their arrows, hooting at them and crying, "Ha, perros a la savana! You dogs, go to the plain." So they're talking to them, they're thinking they're Spanish. This day they could advance no farther, being necessitated to pass the river to continue their march on the other side. Okay, so they had to stop. Too late in the day, they don't want to fucking try and cross this river. Plus there's Indians on the other side that think they're Spanish and they're shooting at them and stuff like that. Hereupon they reposed for the night, though their sleep was not profound, for great murmurings were made at Captain Morgan and his conduct, some being desirous to return home, while others would rather die there and go back a step from their undertaking. Well, they shouldn't have thrown their fucking maize out, right? That's the first thing I think I and anybody else is listening to this right now and is like really following it. That's got to be what you're thinking, right? They finally found like this barn full of maize, right? They all ate their fill of this corn, and then they were all given like a really big allotment of it. So they were set, dude. They could make bread. They could eat the fucking corn if they wanted on their own. They could do any number of things. Make like a paste out of it, a porridge. They could do whatever the fuck they want. And then, you know, they've been through all these ambushes. They know that each one of them has been completely dry of anything, right? Everything's been removed. They've scared off the animals, even like the trees that have fruit or vegetables or anything like that. There are, you know, any plants or whatever that are edible, they've destroyed, put it that way. And all of a sudden, now that they've got like plenty of corn on them, every single one of these pirates has plenty of corn on them. They're actually full. They see this ambush and they automatically just assume, oh, this one must be different than all the rest of them, right? This one right here has got to have all of the best things. And then even still, why would you just drop the fucking food that you have? Wouldn't you just keep that? That's stupid. It's fucking stupid. And now that they're all hungry again, they're bitching about Captain Morgan. When in reality, if they would have just kept their corn, his plan would be working just fine, right? I mean, I said from the top it was a bad idea that they should have brought food with them. There's no getting around that. I think we can all agree on that. Again, anybody that's listening now or listening later, I'm sure we can agree on the fact that you've got 1,200 guys with you. It's your responsibility to feed. You know that. Yet your plan is, oh, well, we'll just take any kind of food or drink we find on these Spanish ambushes, right? But you don't know how big those ambushes are. You don't know how much food or drink they're going to have, right? You've got a long way through the jungle to go. You have like guides, but they're not like the local Indians of Darien guides. They're not going to be taking you on the best ways, helping to feed you, you know. Yeah, you start talking about going through the jungles of Darien, and it's fucking intense, man. Even today, it's one of the most gnarly places you could ever want to have to pass through. It is intense, man. The thickness of the jungle, the wildness of the jungle. Again, everything wants you to die, and it's just so hard to even like trek through. It's so thick and uneven and rocky and fucking vine. It's nuts, man, that they did this in 1670. It's like literally incredible, and they were doing it to go raid a city and hitting amp and just suffering. Yeah, exactly, KD. Pure suffering. It sure was, man. Yeah, Dustin, they would rather eat grass than to die hungry. Yeah, they were eating, the trees, like anything that they thought was edible. They were eating, leaves off the trees, etc. The grass, like you just mentioned, absolutely. Yeah, man. And again, eating like all those leather bags and shit like that. And these guys are just miserable now. But I still say, like, even though I agree with them on the point that it was bad planning from the top to not bring much food, I still say, like, if you would not have thrown that corn away, then you'd be all right now, and you wouldn't be bitching about Captain Morgan. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's their fault. Again, I say, you just went through several of these fake ambush points, right? They're just meant to dehumanize you, right? They do it on purpose. By the time you get there, they're gone. There's nothing to eat. They've killed everything. They're doing it on purpose. You know they're doing it on purpose. You're ready to eat them. You're pissed off. Be mad at them. Don't be mad at fucking Captain Morgan. His plan is actually working if you'd have just kept that corn on you and not thrown. Again, throw away food just because you think there's more food. It's so stupid. Yeah, Dustin, they absolutely should have brought their own food. Yep, absolutely should have. And again, his idea is brilliant. He on his way to go to Panama, right? They took the island of St. Catherine. We recapped that already, but we'll do it real fast. They took the Isle of St. Catherine and the forts. Then they took the castle of Chagres. Both those places are now well fortified. He left men behind there, and he left some food there. That's super responsible, right? He's thinking of his exit plan. He's going to, after he robs Panama, the Spanish are going to go absolutely fucking bots. They're going to be everywhere looking for him. They're going to have to cross the jungle with all their treasure. And when they get to if they can at least just make it to the castle of Chagres, then they'll be fortified. They can hang out. They can fight any Spanish. They have ships out there that they can use to fight any of the Spanish that are around there. Then they can leave from there, go straight to the Isle of St. Catherine, and they have another fortified a fortified location there that's stocked with some food and men. And again, you've got your ships. You can fight off the Spanish if you need to on your way back home to Jamaica and Haiti. You didn't have to leave all of your food in those forts. That shit's insane. That shit's insane. Again, you have 1,200 guys. You need to make sure you're leaving with plenty of food while you cross the gnarliest jungle in your part of the world, period. Just absolutely nuts. And then, but again, I still side on this fact that right now, I'm sorry, on this part, I side with Captain Morgan in this part of the story. They're mad at him and everything, but it's their own dumbass fault for thinking this next ambush was going to be like the one that has Burger King, right? And then even then, just because there's a Burger King there doesn't mean you drop the food that's in your pockets. That's just fucking stupid. So they should be mad at the Spanish, not Captain Morgan. All right. Okay, the seventh day in the morning, they made clean all of their arms, and everyone discharged their pistol or musket without bullet to try their firelocks. This done, they crossed the river, leaving the post where they had rested called Santa Cruz, and at noon they arrived at a village called Cruz. Being yet far from the place, they perceived much smoke from the chimneys. The sight hereof gave them great joy in hopes of finding people and plenty of good cheer. Thus they went on as fast as they could, encouraging one another, saying, "There is smoke comes out of every house. They are making good fires to roast and boil what we are to eat." So they think that just because they see these chimneys going, that these places are like filled with people and there's lots of food and they're going to go down there and eat everything. All right. At length, they arrived there, all sweating and panting, but found no person in the town. Imagine that. Nor anything edible to refresh themselves except good fires, which they wanted not. For the Spaniards, before their departure, had everyone set fire to his own house, except the king's storehouses and stables, man. Wow. They had not left behind them any beast alive or dead, which much troubled their minds, not finding anything but a few cats and dogs, which they immediately killed and devoured. At last, in the king's stables, they found by good fortune 15 or 16 jars of Peru wine and a leather sack full of bread. No sooner had they drank of this wine when they fell sick, almost every man. This made them think the wine was poisoned, which caused a new consternation in the whole camp, judging themselves now to be irrecoverably lost. But the true reason was that their want of sustenance and the manifold sorts of trash they had eaten, their sickness was so great as caused them to remain there till the next morning without being able to prosecute their journey in the afternoon. This village, okay, whatever, we don't need to worry about that. This village is located 26 Spanish leagues from Chagres, where they started, and 8 leagues from Panama. This is the last place to which boats or canoes can come, for which reason they built here storehouses of all sorts of merchandise, which to and from Panama are transported on the backs of mules. You know what that shit means. That means they're going into the dense thick of it now. Yep. The river has stopped. There is no place you can travel up the river clean and clear on a boat, and even in a canoe. You now have to traverse the gnarly, thick, fucked up, rocky jungle where they normally transport the goods on the backs of mules to Panama. You got 8 leagues between you and Panama, and it's just the thickest, gnarliest, most fucked up jungle ever. Here Captain Morgan was forced to leave his canoes and land all of his men, though never so weak. Right, so these, not only are they getting ready to have to go through the thickest, hardest part of this journey, they're all at their weakest and sickest and most fucked up. That's terrible, man. That is fucking, like KD said, suffering. Like, for real. Remember, these guys don't have fucking Tylenol, right? These guys don't have fucking Advil. They don't even have, like, alcohol on them, no liquor on them, right? They got all excited when they saw that wine. And they got sick as fuck when they drank it because they've been eating leather bags and cats and dogs and fucking old bread and handfuls of corn and shit like that, right? And then they're starving and their stomach is filled with acid and shit. And they drink this wine and they're all fucking sick and feeling like they're going to die. Man, so these guys are starving and all fucked up and weak. And they're getting ready to have to cross the gnarliest part of the jungle. And remember, when they get out of this jungle, they have 8 leagues to go, right? Once they cross this 8 leagues, they're supposed to come out into like an open field. That's what the governor of Panama said. He said there's an open field before the gates of Panama, and he's going to have 3,600 fucking soldiers in that field ready for pitched battle the moment the pirates step out of the jungle. The moment they step out of that jungle into that field, the governor of Panama is like, it's go time. And I've got 3 times the menu, right? So it's 3-1, right? The pirates have 1,200. They're going to have 3,600. But the pirates are also going to be starving and fucking weak and not in good shape at all, right? Not in good shape at all. All right. So here Captain Morgan was forced to leave his canoes and land all of his men, though never so weak. But lest the canoes should be surprised or take up too many men for their defense, he sent them all back to the place where the boats were, except for one, which he hid, that it might serve to carry intelligence. Many of the Spaniards and Indians of this village having fled to the near plantations, Captain Morgan ordered that none should go out of the village except companies of 100 men together, fearing that the enemy should take an advantage upon his men. So they're getting closer to their destination. He knows these people have left the ambushes. They're in the last 8-league stretch. So he knows there's Spanish everywhere, and they're just ready to pounce on these fuckers. He knows they know exactly where they are, right? He's not stupid. So he says, look, we've got this village. It's empty. We're all here. If anybody has to leave this village, you don't leave with less than 100 pirates. Period. The end. Not 25, not 50, not 75. You leave with a minimum of 100 pirates if you have to leave this village for any reason whatsoever, right? He says, because these Spanish are ready to just pounce on us, man. At any time, it could happen. All right, let's go through here. Notwithstanding, one party contravened these orders, being tempted with the desire of food, but they were soon glad to fly back into the town again, being assaulted immediately with great fury by some Spaniards and Indians that saw them. They carried one pirate away prisoner. Thus, the vigilancy and care of Captain Morgan was not sufficient to prevent every accident. The 8th day in the morning, Captain Morgan sent 200 men before the body of his army to discover the way to Panama and to discover any ambushes therein. The path being so narrow through the jungle that only 10 or 12 people could possibly march abreast, and often much fewer. After 10 hours' march, they came to a place called Quebrada Obscura. Here, all on a sudden, 3,000 or 4,000 arrows were shot at them. Holy shit. Let's read that again. The 8th day in the morning, Captain Morgan sent 200 pirates before the body of his army, so he sent them out in advance to discover the way to Panama, 200 of them. So he said, you go find the way to Panama and check for ambushes, right? The path through the jungle being so narrow that only 10 or 12 people could march abreast, and often not so many. After 10 hours march, 10 hours in that jungle, fuck that. After 10 hours march, they came to a place called Quebrada Obscura. Here, all on a sudden, 3,000 or 4,000 arrows were shot at them. They could not perceive from whence they came or who shot them, though they presumed it was from a high rocky mountain from one side to the other, whereupon was a grot, capable of but one horse or other beast laded. This multitude of arrows much alarmed the pirates. Yeah, I bet. Especially because they could not discover whence they were discharged. At last, seeing no more arrows fly, they marched a little farther and entered a wood. Here they perceived some Indians to fly away as fast as they could, to take the advantage of another post. Thence to observe their march, yet there remained one troop of Indians on the place, resolved to fight and defend themselves, which they did with great courage until their captain fell down wounded, who, though he despaired of his life, yet his valor being greater than his strength, would ask for no quarter, but being endeavored to raise himself with undaunted mind, laid hold of his javelin and struck at one of the pirates. But before he could get the second blow, he was shot to death. This was also the fate of many of his companions, who, like good soldiers, lost their lives with their captain for the defense of their country. The pirates endeavored to take some of the Indian prisoners, but they being swifter than the pirates, every one escaped, leaving 8 pirates dead and 10 wounded. The Indians being more dexterous in military affairs, they might have defended that passage and let not one man pass. A little while after, they came to a large campaign, open and full of meadows. Is that what it says? This is such a long way to put this. A little while later, they came to a large. What is it? Does it say fucking? It's weird. So they came to an open field in a fine meadow, is basically what this is saying. What a weird way to put that. Okay, so they came to a big open field and a nice meadow. Hence, they could perceive at a distance before them some Indians on top of a mountain, near the way by which they were to pass. They sent 50 men, the nimblest they had, to try and catch any of them and force them to discover their companions, but all in vain, for they escaped by their nimbleness again, and presently showed themselves in another place, yelling back at them in English and crying, "Go back to the savannah." That's funny. Meanwhile, the 10 pirates who were wounded were dressed and plastered up. Here was a wood, and on each side of a mountain. The Indians possessed themselves of one and the pirates of the other. Captain Morgan was persuaded that the Spaniards had placed an ambush there, it lying so conveniently. Hereupon he sent 200 men to search it. The Spaniards and Indians, perceiving the pirates descend the mountain, did so too, as if they were designed to attack them. But being got into the wood out of sight of the pirates, they were seen no more, leaving the passage open. All right, I think that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. Then on their way to Panama, closing in on Panama, fighting the Spanish a little closer each time, starting to close in on them, right? The whole way down the river and the whole way there. They've just been fucking with their heads, man, and slowly removing everything from the jungle that they could possibly eat, right? That was the name of the game. They weren't really ambushes at all. They were just places where the Spanish could hang out, know exactly where the pirates were, along the way. They would fuck with their heads and leave fires and all kinds of shit, leave absolutely no food. Even in the jungle, they'd make sure there was no food. And then finally, when they got to that end, right where their fucking river ended, right, where they couldn't even take canoes anymore and they were going to have to get out and go on foot through the thickest part of the jungle, where they used mules to bring things through. That's when the Spanish started descending on them little by little, which was a good plan on their part, right? It was a bad plan to not bring food with you. That was a fucking terrible plan. Terrible fucking plan. All around, no matter which angle you look at it, like even if you try and give it to Captain Morgan and go, well, he was going to take it from the Spanish in the ambushes, right? But you don't know that. You don't know that. You can't get caught like that, man. You're slipping. You have to make sure, that'll just be extra. That's like, if you find that's sprinkles, man. You got to have your own supply of food guaranteed. It can't be a problem. You got 1,200 people, and these 1,200 people have to be in good shape so they can fight and cross jungles and stuff like that, right? So that was just bad fucking news. But yeah, the Spanish knew what they were doing, man. They just scorched the earth, right? In a matter of speaking, they took away all the food, fucked with their heads a little bit along the way, knew exactly where they were at by keeping tabs on them. So they had spies all through the trees, so they would know, at least 6 hours before they would hit the next post. They had plenty of time to get out of there and get rid of any extra food, run off the animals like immediately, immediately. But yeah, then they got to the end of the river, went into that village, and Captain Morgan knew what time it was. He said, listen, man, we're getting close now, right? We have to go on foot. And we're surrounded by Spanish. He was like, don't get it twisted. He said, do not leave this village with less than 100 people together, right? Do not leave this village under any circumstances with less than 100 people together. And what happened? One group decided to do just that. And they got fucked up, right? It said that he wasn't able to prevent that accident because they didn't follow his rules. That's exactly what it said. Not everybody paid attention to what he said. They decided to go out on their own, try and find some food on their own. And they ended up getting fucked up. One of them got taken prisoner. He's fucked. That guy was fucked. They never heard from that guy again. Forget about it. That dude died in the jungle out there. Of course, man. But yeah, now they're moving about. They're actually in that thick jungle. They're moving around. Said that you couldn't get more than a few people, standing shoulder to shoulder. The paths were so fucked up and so thick and treacherous. These people are at their weakest. They're starving. These people are literally starving, right? They've already been in the jungle for 8 or 9 days. They've been eating leather. They should have kept that corn too, right? How stupid was that? That was another fucking ridiculous move on the part of the pirates, man. Because again, no matter which side you look at that from, it just doesn't make sense. You finally run across all this corn. You've been starving. Like, your prayers have been answered, right? You find a barn full of this. Everybody eats their fill. They're feeling better, right? There's enough to where everybody gets a huge allotment of it. They're carrying it on them. They can eat it. They can make bread. They can eat it raw. They can do it, make porridge or whatever. You can do all kinds of things with corn. Forget about it. And, they've been through a handful of these quote unquote ambushes. They know they're burned out, right? They know that it's scorched earth. We're going to put it that way just to keep it simple. They know there's nothing to eat in these places, but all of a sudden you see another one and you just for no reason whatsoever think it must be the magic one. And then on top of that, even if it is the magic one, like we said earlier a couple times, why would you give up the food that you have on you? Why wouldn't you just add to it, right? It's just ridiculous, man. But either way, they're trapped. They're in the jungle now fighting the Spanish much closer. They're at their absolute weakest. They're in bad shape. They've been sick. They've been fucked up. Now they're marching hours and hours and hours and hours. This first little march just took them 10 hours, right? They've still got a long way to go to Panama. But remember, as soon as they step out of the jungle, as soon as they step out of that tree line into this field that leads to the gates of Panama, the governor has 3,600 guys waiting for these tired, starving pirates, right? And it's a 3-to-1 battle just to start with. If there's 3,600 people ready for a pitched battle just in that field, that means there's more beyond the gates of Panama. Forget about it, right? So it's a 3-to-1 battle just to start, and it's the moment they step out of the trees. He says it's on, right? As soon as we see you show your face out of that tree line, you're fucking done, he says, right? And they're going to be starving and weak and fucked up. But we've still got a little bit of a ways to go. Probably not much. I'd say probably like another chapter before they hit that field. Maybe it might just be the rest of this chapter 13 that we left off on. It might just be the rest of that one. I'd say we made it a good halfway through that chapter. So maybe it's only a half a chapter till we get to Panama. And we'll do that again next week. We'll be back for another history of the Pirates and Buccaneers next week one day. I'm not sure exactly which day. I do these whenever I have the time, whenever I find some time, So either way, this is episode 4. So if anybody that hears this later happens to maybe stumble across it, there are other episodes. I created a tab for it on the channel, so they're easy to find. Definitely go back and listen to the other 3 before this one. You'll get a great history on the Buccaneers, and you'll get the whole story on where our firsthand account comes from, why this is so important. You get a couple of other tales in the beginning there too. You have Rock Braziliano. You have the pirate L'Olonois. Both of their stories are in the beginning. So are like the very first tales of buccaneering and how those people became buccaneers and where they came from. So definitely go back and listen to the last episodes if you haven't already. Like I said, if you stumble across this or haven't. And click the like button and all that kind of stuff. Leave a comment on your favorite part of the story tonight. Or if you go back and listen to the other ones, leave comments there. But definitely if you're listening now, leave a comment for the show. Like your favorite part of the story or something that shocked you about the way that the pirates got down, right? Maybe their rules or how they handled certain things. Maybe some of Captain Morgan's decisions, because that guy is just a wild, wild guy. He can be cornered and still be arrogant and flagrant. He can know that he's going to win and he'll still give you a chance, He's a funny guy, and he has a dark sense of humor, which I always find amusing. And he does not back down. None of these pirates do. They just don't. In every tale that we have gone through, whenever, when they've been like outnumbered, or it just seems like there's no way they can win, they just literally turn in that direction and go straight for it. They just go straight towards the trouble. They did that in Maracaibo a couple times with Captain Morgan. Lolonois did it. Rock Brasiliano, that guy, that's an amazing tale. You got to go back and listen to that. I think that was in part of episode 1 and episode 2. His is one of my favorite stories. Talk about somebody that went head on into trouble and then won. These guys, they just win. They just win, man. They take some casualties here and there, but at the end of the day, they always get their prize, man. They always get their prize. But we'll be back again next week, like I say. I appreciate everybody that came through here tonight. It's always good seeing you. And we'll see you again soon. If I'm not back on Wednesday for a Hell Chat, I'll be back on Friday for the Skull Bro Show. So we'll see everybody soon.